Chapter 555. Meiji searched everywhere, gathering an army of 40 to 50,000 people. These were the old subordinates of Darkness City, but after the defeat, not only did they lose their soldiers, their morale was also low. Not to mention taking back Darkness City, without the tyrant barracks secretly sending food and supplies, it would be a problem for them to survive in this place. The tyrant barracks has limited supplies and there is a large risk of being discovered if we stay here. Meiji was discussing things with Shadow in the temporary barracks. We have to leave this place and go to a safer place. Shadow was stunned. Chu Tian hasn't returned yet. He has already left for several days. We can't keep waiting like this. This place is always under threat and the army's morale is unstable. It's easy for something to happen. Meiji seemed like he had already made a decision, not to mention that human can bring reinforcements. Don't be stupid, no matter how strong he is on the surface, he can't do anything in the purgatory world. Of course Shadow knew this. He was very unwilling. His father was killed and his city was taken. Could it be that he had to run away with his tail between his legs? That human had done many unimaginable things. How was he going to deal with this? We don't have time, we have to leave now. Meiji knew that one more minute meant one more minute of danger. Rather than placing our hopes in an impractical place, it's better to leave behind a final spark for Darkness City. Shadow gave a sigh. They could only do this. Meiji immediately gave the orders. When they were prepared to leave, a sentry suddenly rushed over and said, "Vice City Lord, this is bad. Our tracks have been exposed. There is a large army coming from Darkness City." Meiji's face fell when he heard this. What army? Flame Demon City, Dark Shadow City, Dark Gold City, and Dark Beast City, the elite troops of the four cities, there are around 100,000 of them. Shadow quickly asked, who is leading them? Yes. The four city lords. Everyone's faces turned pale. It's over, it's all over. It was already too late to run now. Because when the sentry came to report, black smoke appeared in all directions. The large advance troops had already cut off their retreat and several thousand elite winged demon soldiers blocked the sky. At this time, the elite troops of the four major cities marched over at an extremely fast speed. The troops Meiji controlled were in chaos, not forming a formation at all. Not to mention fighting, it was even a problem sending out orders. Meiji, are you surprised? A tall and strong flame demon walked in front. He was the Flame Demon City's city lord. Kildan was just the vice city lord. This person had the strength of the peak 9th true spirit layer and could break through with just a single step. Even in the purgatory world, he was a peak expert. You can only blame yourself for being too stupid. Gathering the defeated soldiers like this, do you really think you have a chance to make a comeback? Meiji immediately understood. This fellow used the surrendered traitors of Darkness City, pretending to be defeated soldiers that Meiji gathered, so he found Meiji's hiding place. The Shadow City Lord sneered. Zoro, that trash, can't even do such a small thing. We still have to do it ourselves. Don't waste time talking nonsense. The Dark Giant City Master of Black Gold City was impatient. Go, destroy them. An army of 100,000 was about to descend. Meiji and Ying's hearts were like dead ashes. The four city lords were already very strong existences and now they were surrounding this place with an army of 100,000, they had no chance of escaping. Who would have thought that when the four city lords were prepared to attack, there would be a voice that came from the air, "Sorry, I came back a bit late, but luckily I made it in time." Meiji was stunned. The humans had returned. Before Chu Tian left, he had vowed that he would bring reinforcements. Now that he had returned, did the reinforcements come back or not? Chu Tian instantly appeared in the air. There was only one small and three large figures beside him. He didn't bring anything else. Meiji's eyes were stunned. Where are your reinforcements? Chu Tian spread out his hands. Aren't they all here? Meiji instantly felt despair. For reinforcements? No matter how strong they were, just four trivial people, what kind of waves could they cause? They were facing an army of 100,000. Even if it was just the four city lords, it would be hard to deal with them. The 5 people that appeared out of nowhere made the 4 Purgatory World City Lords slightly stunned. Where did these fellows come from? This was really strange. The 4 forest giants looked around the Purgatory World and felt it was very strange. They simply couldn't believe that they had been in the surface world a moment ago, but they had been sent to the underground world several thousand miles deep in an instant. Which little rat is seeking death? Really noisy. Deathwing didn't place them in his eyes at all, treating them like a group of flies. Now that the flies were buzzing around, he clearly felt very dissatisfied. He softly said, "Who's coming?" Thunder's Fury snorted, "The Titan's hand is used to create miracles. This kind of trash cleaning job is beneath his status." The Elven King gave a helpless sigh, "Let's take a look first." "Hey, can you all play properly?" Chu Tian stared at them and said, "Don't forget why you came here." Although they didn't know what he was saying, from the other side's casual tone and attitude, the Purgatory City Lords felt like they had been greatly insulted. Seeking death. The 4 of them were very strong. They were lords of a region in the Purgatory world. When had they ever been looked down upon like this before? With a cultivation base in the peak 9th True Spirit layer, there were already few opponents. Not to mention the Purgatory City Lords had resources that normal people couldn't imagine. Therefore, their strength was more than double that of a normal True Spirit expert. Burst Claw stood out at this time, ignoring the powerful killing intent coming from the 4 of them. He just coldly said, "No need to trouble yourself, you can all come together." Burst Claw slightly released a trace of evil aura and the 4 city lords instantly felt their bodies tremble. They all had a strange feeling that the one standing in front of them wasn't a 3-meter-tall unknown race, but a 100-meter-tall peerless vicious beast. Burst Claw suppressed his body and didn't release his full aura, but just a part of it was enough to create a strong deterrent to the 4 city lords. The 4 city lords could instantly confirm that this fellow was a peak expert that had already surpassed the True Spirit realm. How could he be this strong? What made the 4 city lords even more shocked was that among these 5 people, other than the human looking a bit weaker, the others seemed to be on the same level. Could it be that these 4 were super experts that had already surpassed the True Spirit realm? This was impossible. If these experts existed in the Purgatory world, it was impossible for these well-informed city lords to not know about them. No, it couldn't be true. This was definitely a trick. They were trying to scare off the 100,000 army of the 4 cities with just 4 trivial people? This was simply wishful thinking. Perhaps as long as they made a move, they would immediately be exposed. Although they were thinking this, the 4 city lords didn't dare act alone. They looked at each other and gave the order at the same time, "Kill! Kill for me!" The 100,000 army instantly moved like a tide. Si Deshang gave the order to attack before flying off. Even if this person in front of them was a super expert that surpassed the True Spirit realm, it was impossible for him to instantly defeat 4 peak 9th True Spirit layer experts. Even if this fellow in front of them was a super expert that surpassed their imaginations, it was impossible for him to fight against an army of 100,000 elites. Even if they used numbers, they could still kill him. The 4 city lords used their strongest cultivation techniques. The flame demon released a sea of lava and his body was covered in lava. His feet stepped on waves of flames, just like a great demon god that could destroy the heavens and earth. The shadow demon turned into several dozen clones and each clone was filled with a strong power. They all disappeared into the void and disappeared without a trace. Burst Claw faced this aggressive attack, but he did not move at all. He just gave an angry roar into the sky. Roar! The Shadow Demon clones were forced out in front of Burst Claw, and they were all shattered with a roar. The Shadow Demon's main body was bleeding from his 7 orifices, his mind was broken, and his soul was shattered, dying on the spot. The Fire Demon was shaken by the Golden Behemoth's roar, and the entire sea of lava beneath its feet evaporated for some reason. It felt as if thousands of sharp attacks had landed on its body at the same time. The Fire Demon's half-elemental body instantly exploded, and its mind collapsed, causing it to lose all its combat strength. The Black Giant and the Black Spirit Beast were a bit further away, so they weren't affected much, but they were still heavily injured. One roar. Just one roar. Of the 4 peak 9th true spirit layer experts, 1 was killed on the spot, 1 was crippled on the spot, and the other 2 were heavily injured. The Dark Giant and the Dark Spirit Beast were stunned. They didn't know what secret technique this fellow used to have this kind of terrifying attack power, but no matter what secret technique he used, this person was definitely an expert that surpassed the true spirit realm. Moreover, his realm was so high that it far surpassed their imaginations. Want to run? The golden behemoth gave a cold laugh and instantly caught up to the Dark Giant. The Dark Giant was close to 10 meters tall and the behemoth casually clawed at it. 4 blood-red blade glows were like iron blades cutting through a watermelon. The Dark Giant's incomparably large body was torn apart on the spot and a several dozen meter long claw mark was left on the ground. Burst Claw only attacked once, so it didn't matter if he killed him or not. His figure quickly disappeared in the air and he caught up to the escaping Dark Spirit Beast. His arms clawed and the strong body of a peak 9th true spirit layer expert was torn apart like paper in Burst Claw's hands. The 4 city lords couldn't even last 1 round in front of Burst Claw. Even Chu Tian was very shocked this time. Although he knew that Burst Claw and the others weren't weak, he never would have thought that they would be this strong. The troops of the 4 cities were all stunned. The 4 city lords were defeated just like that. Chapter 556. The strong were respected in this world. The Purgatory world was a place where large amounts of dark races and demons lived. The struggle for survival was even crueler and they worshipped experts even more. The 4 city lords were not just city lords, they were also the spiritual leaders and strongest experts, otherwise it was impossible for them to rule the city. The 4 respected and revered bigwigs were easily defeated like weak chickens. A destructive blow, this was a destructive blow to their morale. Burst Claw was worthy of being the overlord of the Savage Highlands. Not only did he have a high cultivation, he was also a behemoth, a golden behemoth. His race was blessed by the heavens and because of his innate talent, he could defeat cultivators several realms away. Not to mention that Burst Claw's cultivation wasn't low. Could several peak 9th true spirit layer experts be his opponent? Burst Claw didn't have enough fun at all. Roar! Before the armies of the 4 cities could recover from their shock, a roar that was 10 times louder than before erupted. It could spread over several hundred miles of wilderness, making every living being feel fear from their souls. That wild and bloodthirsty killing intent was like a volcano that had been suppressed for tens of thousands of years suddenly erupting. Burst Claw instantly released all the secret technique seals and instantly turned into a 200 to 300 meter tall colossus. This colossus looked a bit like a gorilla, but it was twice as thick and 10 times more ferocious. The fur on its body seemed to be plated with a layer of dark gold, and its claws that contained berserk power were scarlet red. The true appearance of a behemoth. A thick arm was raised, and around the 5 scarlet fingernails, a raging energy storm was set off. Finally, the storm gathered together and swept out. Blood-red violent energy poured out in torrents, forming a giant energy tornado that was several hundred meters tall. Ah! Monster! Monster! Wherever this blood-red tornado went, the entire terrain changed. As long as one was sucked in, whether it was flesh or stone, they would all be turned to dust by the high-speed energy flow. The power of a golden behemoth was not something a normal person could resist. When had these Purgatory world creatures seen this kind of terrifying existence before? They were all scared out of their wits. Even if they had the advantage in numbers, they didn't have any thoughts of fighting at this moment. They could only throw away their armor and run in all directions. Burst Claw revealed a look of disappointment. The Purgatory world was more boring than imagined. The 100,000 people weren't weak, and if they fought back, Burst Claw would have to spend quite a bit of energy. Who would have thought that these fellows would run without even fighting, making Burst Claw unable to enjoy the joy of fighting and killing? Sir Burst Claw, the power you've displayed is enough. Chu Tian reminded, it's best if we don't waste too much time on these shrimp soldiers and crab generals. Burst Claw said in a very disdainful voice, you can guess Darkness City's level from these trash abilities. For such a weak city, you actually asked us to work together, you're looking down on us too much. Don't say so much, Just treat it as a vacation in the purgatory world. Let's go. Chu Tian didn't forget to look at Mei Ji and the Shadow Envoy. What do you two think of the reinforcements now? Both of them seemed to have lost the ability to think at the same time. This golden behemoth seemed to be the weakest among the four, but even so, it possessed shocking combat power. How powerful were the other three? A dragon's roar filled the sky. A dragon's might covered the sky, and it almost made the escaping army go crazy. Those with weak willpower couldn't resist kneeling on the ground. Death Wing released the restriction on his body and spread his wings into the air, turning into a 50-meter-long giant dragon. Each black scale seemed to be filled with a powerful energy, and his body was covered in a layer of destructive dark flames. Dragon? It's a dragon! Perhaps there were people in the purgatory world who couldn't recognize a behemoth, but there was no one who couldn't recognize a dragon. After all, whether it was on the surface or underground, the dragon race and fire dragon subspecies were widely distributed. The giant dragon was a high-level dragon race with the purest bloodline. The black dragon in front of them was clearly a mature giant dragon that had lived for countless years. The might and strength the black dragon revealed was even stronger than the behemoths. That pair of large and narrow eyes swept over the place, directly destroying the fighting spirit of the purgatory world soldiers. With the Dragon Lord's pride, it disdained to slaughter a group of defenseless trash. It released a dignified and loud voice. "Where is Darkness City?" Chu Tian pointed in a direction, "This place." As soon as Chu Tian's voice fell, another majestic heavenly might descended. The sky of the purgatory world was covered in thunderclouds for the first time, and countless bolts of lightning wildly intertwined. The great Titan Thunder's fury released his seal and instantly turned into a 100-meter-tall giant. Titan, this was an ancient race that was not inferior to the behemoth and giant dragons. Legends say that the Titans had the hardest metal as their skin, magma as their muscles, lightning as their blood, and crystals as their bones. This race was not just the strongest warriors on the continent, they were also the most outstanding craftsmen on the continent. Titan's fury! Thunder's fury raised his hands high up, and all the energy gathered in the thunderclouds gathered in his hands. In an instant, a lightning storm was formed. Thunder's fury's hands rubbed the lightning together like cotton, finally turning it into a 100-meter-long lightning arrow. Go! Thunder's fury waved his hand in the direction of Darkness City, and the lightning arrow released a terrifying whistling sound. It was like a sun as it flew across the land, instantly disappearing into the horizon. This. Mei Ji and the others were already stunned. This powerful giant was this far away, yet it could still attack Darkness City? This already surpassed the understanding of normal beings. There was a faint shaking sound coming from the distance. When everyone rushed to Darkness City without stopping, the scene in front of them filled them with shock. There was a large hole in Darkness City's protective barrier, and almost the entire city wall was destroyed. The terrifying impact clearly spread into the city, causing several buildings to collapse and over 100 buildings to be damaged. As for the number of casualties, it was impossible to calculate. The Titan had shot an arrow from several hundred miles away, completely destroying Darkness City's defenses. What kind of earth-shattering power was this? Thunder's fury's destructive might was this strong. In front of this kind of expert, normal barriers were no different than paper. If they weren't afraid of Lancelot, Cenarius, and Augusta, these peak experts of the Forest of Chaos, perhaps Miracle City would have already been turned into ruins by the Behemoth's fury, the Titan's lightning, and the Black Dragon's breath. Death Wing arrived in Darkness City first, ignoring the densely packed resistance in Darkness City. A purple-red flame came out of Death Wing's mouth, and he spat it out as he flew, circling the city in a short period of time. The purple-black flames ignited Darkness City, and countless people cried out pitifully as they struggled in the terrifying dragon flames. Death Wing was a black dragon that specialized in darkness, curses, and death energy. This was not a normal flame, rather it was a dark dragon flame filled with death energy. Not only could it instantly destroy any building or defense, it could also ignite living beings and turn them into undying monsters. Therefore, any target killed by Deathwing's Death Dragon Flame would immediately become a puppet controlled by Deathwing. A single dragon flame burned tens of thousands of people. The tens of thousands of people were quickly reborn from the flames, but they had already turned into wild monsters. The low-life forms in Deathwing's eyes were no different from ants. No matter how many ants he killed, he wouldn't feel any guilt. As long as he wanted to, it wasn't hard for him to ignite the entire city. Stop, stop, stop. Chu Tian saw Darkness City in a mess and immediately shouted out, "I want to complete Darkness City. Do you want to create a pile of trash ruins?" Meiji's heart trembled when she saw this. Whether it was the behemoth, the titan, the black dragon, or the elf that hadn't made a move yet, they were all terrifying existences that surpassed mortals. Chu Tian dared to use this kind of tone to talk to them. This was too crazy and too risky. Enough! An angry roar came from the Darkness City that was about to turn into ruins. A figure charged out with extreme speed, without any decorations or tricks. His body was covered in spirit energy as he charged at the black dragon in the air in a wild and violent manner. Lancelot saw the figure covered in spirit energy from afar and he revealed a slightly surprised expression, but his voice was still calm. A Heaven Domain Realm cultivator? The Heaven Domain Realm was the fourth large realm of cultivators. There weren't many cultivators that could reach the Heaven Domain Realm on the continent. If the true spirit realm could only be considered an expert in a certain area, then once one reached the Heaven Domain Realm, they could be considered an expert in most areas of the continent. Other than a few truly hidden old monsters, Heaven Domain Realm experts could move unhindered on the continent. This must be the Eastern Territory King raised by the 4 city lords. Meiji said in a somewhat worried voice, "His strength is unfathomable." Then that. Can His Excellency the Black Dragon deal with him? Ha! Lancelot's laugh was elegant and filled with charm. Just like a graceful noble cultivator, there are strong and weak in the Heaven Domain Realm. This demon is only in the mortal domain realm. He can't cultivate a mature source spirit domain. Deathwing Nidhogg is an existence close to the sacred domain realm, and because of the giant dragon race's innate advantage, he can even fight a true sacred domain expert. The Heaven Domain Realm was divided into the early, middle, and late stages: mortal domain, spirit domain, and sacred domain. Deathwing Nidhogg was in the peak 6th Heaven Domain layer. That was a powerful existence that was half a step into the sacred domain realm. With the giant dragon race's innate strength and innate advantage, even if he fought a sacred domain cultivator, he wouldn't be at a disadvantage. This demon known as the Eastern Territory King was not weak. At most he was in the 1st or 2nd Heaven Domain layer. He was only in the mortal domain realm and couldn't cultivate a powerful domain, so how could he fight the strong Dragon Lord? Chapter 557. Heaven Domain experts were very rare. This was mainly because the cultivation of a Heaven Domain expert couldn't be casually achieved, and it wasn't something that could be achieved by wildly consuming pills. A large part of the Heaven Domain expert was related to their race's limit. This was the dividing line between a low and high-level race. For example, Deathwing, Thunder's Fury, and Burstclaw all had a pure high-level bloodline. Therefore, they didn't need to cultivate and could reach the Heaven Domain realm as soon as they reached adulthood. If it was a human, then as a low-level race, they wouldn't have any power and all their cultivation came from hard work. When they reached the true spirit realm, they had already reached the ceiling and couldn't go any higher. No matter how good their innate talent was or how many pills they had, it was useless. Why was it like this? This was the limit of their race's growth. If they wanted to step into the Heaven Domain realm, they had to find a way to break the innate shackles. To open this bottleneck, they had to have a fortuitous encounter. A large warring kingdom only had 1 or 2 Heaven Domain experts. In empires, Heaven Domain experts were considered peak experts. Because Heaven Domain experts rarely had enemies, these people were all large characters that could shake a region. The Eastern Territory King had never fought a giant dragon before, but based on his confidence in his own strength, he actually took the initiative to attack Deathwing Nidhogg. So what if it was a giant dragon? Even if it was a dragon, he had to give it a try. Even if he couldn't win, he could at least retreat. If he didn't fight and ran, it would be too shameful. The Eastern Territory King had this thought as he was covered in a white light. This was no longer pure spirit energy, rather it was a domain formed by the power of a heaven domain expert. The space within the domain would weaken, and the increase in power was something that cultivators under the heaven domain realm couldn't imagine. Why could Thunder's fury destroy Darkness City from 100 miles away? This was because Thunder's fury was a peak 6th heaven domain layer expert. The thunderstorm could form a very mature and stable domain. When the Titan's thunder was thrown out, it was surrounded by Thunder's fury's domain energy, therefore no matter how far it flew, its power wouldn't weaken until it hit its target. This was the power of a heaven domain expert. Cultivators under the heaven domain realm couldn't understand it at all. The Eastern Domain King was only in the 1st or 2nd heaven domain layer. Although his domain hadn't matured yet, the power of his fist was enough to shatter a mountain. He didn't cultivate any profound cultivation technique, he only had pure wild strength, a terrifying aura that could destroy everything. Boom! The king of the Eastern region finally punched out without any unnecessary decorations. The energy condensed in this punch was beyond imagination, and the surrounding space distorted and deformed under the tremendous pressure. In the end, it turned into a layer of vibrating spatial ripples that smashed into Nidhogg's body like a rock that could crush dry weeds and rotten wood. This time, a powerful energy wave erupted, shattering a part of the black dragon's scales on the spot. However, in comparison, the Eastern Domain King's body trembled, and he was flung away like a meteor. Deathwing was covered in a layer of black light. This was clearly the power of his domain. His taunting voice echoed in the sky. So weak, it's not even enough to scratch an itch. The Eastern Domain King stumbled several dozen meters before standing up in a sorry state. It was hard to believe what was happening in front of him. There was no living being that could take this punch, but the black dragon had only lost a few scales. Although he guessed that this dragon was stronger than him, he never thought that the difference in strength would be this big. The white light appeared once again. The Eastern Domain King stepped into the air and instantly moved several hundred meters. Wanna run? Can you run? Deathwing's earth-shaking dragon roar filled the sky as his 50-meter-long body turned into a black shadow. Although his body was incomparably large, his speed was even faster as he opened his large mouth at the Eastern Domain King. There was no sound. There were no fluctuations. There was no light. The Eastern Domain King fell to the ground like he had lost control. Following this, a strong and invisible energy fell down and the ground caved in. The white light covering the Eastern Domain King quickly faded, and from the sounds of bones breaking coming from his body, at least half of his bones had been broken and there were several places that caved in. This was a heaven domain expert using his domain to fight back. There was no doubt that Deathwing Nidhogg had an overwhelming strength. Although they were both heaven domain experts, it wasn't hard for Deathwing to kill this fellow with his strength. Deathwing was prepared to use more strength to completely crush this fellow. Mercy, mercy, don't kill me. The fellow called the Eastern Domain King kneeled on the ground and begged for mercy. This made everyone's eyes pop out. Heaven domain experts were rarely seen on the continent, so they should be very proud existences. This fellow didn't have the dignity of an expert at all, directly kneeling on the ground and begging for mercy. Chu Tian saw this and said, "Your Excellency Deathwing, he no longer has the ability to resist, so let him live for now." Deathwing withdrew his strength and his body shrank again, turning back into the 3-meter-tall draconian. The Purgatory World's mission was too easy, there was no challenge at all. Chu Tian made a gesture, "Meiji, I'll leave this fellow to you, I'll personally interrogate him later." Meiji quickly cupped her hands, "Yes." In front of these people, Meiji couldn't explode no matter how angry she was only filled with deep shock and helplessness. Where did Chu Tian find these monsters? Any one of them had the ability to rule half the Purgatory world, but these shocking experts were willing to listen to Chu Tian's arrangements. Just how strong was this human strength? The Eastern Domain King was already half dead, completely losing his battle strength. Chu Tian looked at the messy Darkness City and said with knit brows, "A good city has become like this, I'm afraid it'll take a while to repair it." "It's not that troublesome, let me do it." The Elven King Lancelot hadn't made a move yet, but he took the initiative to come out at this time. Chu Tian didn't know what medicine the Elven King was selling in his gourd. The Elven King inserted the forest scepter into the ground and slowly raised his hands. An invisible but omnipresent power flooded out in all directions, covering the entire area in Lancelot's power. Sacred Domain. Death Wing, Thunder's Fury, and Burst Claw were stunned because Lancelot had been the master of the Eternal Forest for less than 100 years and had never fought them before. Therefore, even Deathwing didn't know how strong Lancelot was. But now it seemed like, at least in terms of cultivation, Lancelot was ahead of the other three giants. He was at least in the 7th Heaven Domain layer, worthy of being one of the most outstanding kings of the elven race. Lancelot's source spirit was released. This was a very strange source spirit that was like a crystal-clear hourglass. There were all kinds of exquisite and precise runes on the surface, as if it contained some kind of heaven and earth law. Large amounts of faint silver light came from all directions and gathered into the hourglass, finally forming a bottle of silver sand. The silver sand began to fall down. During this process, a strange energy covered the entire area, quickly extinguishing the dark dragon flames. The destroyed buildings and the parts that Thunder's fury had pierced through were quickly restored. Everything was quickly restored by this strange energy. Other than the people that had been killed, everything else returned to normal. After around 5 minutes, the entire Darkness City seemed to have returned to how it was 5 minutes ago. It was like time flowed in the opposite direction as it should have in the past 5 minutes. Meiji had just tied up the Eastern Domain King. When she saw the Elven King's strange energy, she revealed a look of disbelief. "This is..." Chu Tian rubbed his chin and revealed a very interested expression. Time source spirit. Sir Elven King really has hidden his strength well. Lancelot didn't use his true strength because with the forest scepter in his hand, he was already comparable to most experts. Now that they saw the Elven King's own strength, everyone revealed looks of shock because who would have thought that the Elven King's attribute would be time that was rarer than space? Time hourglass. This was the Elven King's source spirit. Lancelot could collect the flow of time and turn it back, so all the buildings destroyed in the battle were restored. Time power, this was one of the most mysterious and complex energies in this world. Lancelot not only had an innate time energy, he could also turn back time. His innate time energy was very strong. Death Wing, Thunder's Fury, and Burst Claw's expressions all changed. Lancelot really wasn't simple. Although the elves didn't have an advantage in terms of race, so even if their cultivation was a bit higher, they wouldn't have the advantage. However, with the forest scepter and the ability to control time, the Elven King's overall strength clearly surpassed the three giants. Luckily, they didn't directly clash with this fellow. Darkness City was basically repaired after being destroyed. With the overwhelming strength of the 4 forest giants, they took back Darkness City without any suspense. Moreover, with Darkness City as the center, Flame Demon City, Dark Shadow City, Dark Gold City, and Dark Beast City, now that the city lords and vice city lords had been taken care of, the millions of citizens and soldiers were in chaos. The 5 cities were all controlled in their hands. Close to half of the Purgatory World's eastern territory was in their hands. Chu Tian cleaned up Darkness City before bringing the 4 giants and Meiji to the main hall. The Eastern Domain King was also brought in. The Eastern Domain King's injuries weren't light, but he wasn't a normal race. His vitality was very strong, so it wasn't fatal yet. Spare me, I'll do anything. Don't kill me. The Eastern Domain King kept kowtowing on the ground, which made Death Wing and the others very dissatisfied. A respected Heaven Domain expert didn't even have a bit of backbone. This was simply throwing away their face. Chu Tian calmly said, "That will depend on your performance." Chapter 558. The king of the eastern region was 2.5 meters tall, muscular, and had a humanoid figure. He had a head and 4 arms, but he didn't have a demon tail or horns. He didn't even have a mouth, nose, or ears. However, his throat had a special structure that vibrated to speak. In addition, he had no hair from head to toe, and his skin was pitch black with a metallic luster. It was like a lump of black iron in human form. This unlucky guy only had a few days of prestige, and now he had become a prisoner at the mercy of others. The Eastern Domain King didn't have any aura at all. His body was wrapped in chains and he couldn't move as he knelt on the ground. He was being held by Meiji and Shadow on the left and right, looking around in a panic. He looked stupid and ugly. He didn't look like a peak expert that had reached the Heaven Domain realm. That was strange. This demon had just been seriously injured by Deathwing and had almost recovered in a short period of time. This kind of regenerative ability did not seem to be something that any corporeal demon should have. Chu Tian was too lazy to guess and asked directly, "What race are you from? What's your name?" "I'm from the Black Demon race." The Eastern Region King hurriedly said, "My full name is Atu Raymond Gedon Bigo Almond." The names of the evil demon race and the dark race were usually long and stinky. Meiji Ing, if the full name was said out loud, it would be a few dozen words. The evil demon race and the dark race were called by their abbreviations. Just 2 or 3 words were enough. His name was Atu. Black demon race? Motherfucker, you think I'm uncultured? Chu Tian knew about the black demon race. The black demon race was a kind of low-grade demons. They were basically the same as the green demons. Could the black demons cultivate to the Heaven Domain realm? What's more, this Atu's body didn't have any dark demon characteristics. That metallic luster of his skin was as hard as steel. It was clear that this scoundrel was talking nonsense, so dishonest, and I hate dishonest people the most. I have to teach him a lesson. First, cut off his limbs. Meiji was about to execute him. No, stop. Atu's expression changed greatly in fright as he immediately defended himself. I really am. Hey Mo, I only met with an accident and became like this. Chu Tian raised his hand to stop Meiji and asked, "What accident?" Atu didn't dare to hide anything. He recounted the bizarre experience that he had gone through in its entirety. 20 years ago, Atu was just a low-level demon living at the bottom. One day, as usual, he went into the mountains to look for medicinal ingredients. However, he unexpectedly fell into the ruins of an underground palace. He was trapped for more than 10 days. In his hunger and thirst, Atu discovered that there was a type of blood-red lingji mushroom in the underground palace. He didn't know the origin of these lingji mushrooms, but he didn't care so much at that time. He immediately ate these lingji mushrooms as food. Chu Tian frowned and asked, "What happened next?" "There is no after," Atu said with a nervous expression. "After I ate those things, I fell asleep. When I woke up, an entire 20 years had passed. My body had undergone great changes and my strength had increased by more than 100 times. In the end, after half a year of cultivation, I grasped some of the secret techniques recorded in the underground palace and finally broke through the barrier to escape." Did he eat a strange elixir? He slept for 20 years? After waking up, his body underwent a huge change, and he gained 100-fold strength? No matter how one looked at it, it was all nonsense. I swear on my name as a demon that my soul will fall into eternal hell if I say half a lie. Atu didn't care about this much in order to protect his life. After I left the underground palace, I found that my cultivation had reached the first Heaven Domain layer. If I met those fellows from Flame Demon City now, if I met those Purgatory City Lords 20 years ago, I would be no different from a bug on the side of the road, being trampled to death at any moment. What I never thought was that these Purgatory City Lords would be very respectful to me, wanting to support me in the Eastern Territory King position. They even promised to take down Darkness City and make it my personal city, so he roughly understood. If Atu really wasn't lying, it was very likely that he had a fortuitous encounter. This was because a medicine that could change a person's physique and affect them even more deeply, perhaps only a legendary divine-grade medicine could do this. Atu swallowed this kind of top-grade medicine and not dying was already a great fortune. In the end, his physique was mysteriously changed and his strength increased greatly. This fellow's luck could no longer be described as good. The motives of the Purgatory City Lords could be easily explained. Even if this fellow had the strength of a Heaven Domain expert, his thoughts were still at the level of a dark demon. His brain wasn't good and he was short-sighted, only having martial strength and no influence. The status of a heaven domain expert was very useful. The 4 city lords could use his name in the future. Wouldn't they be able to sweep the resources of the entire region? The tribes and powers that didn't submit would instantly return, paying tribute and not daring to disrespect them. This was a large advantage for the purgatory cities. Atu had mysteriously become the Eastern Territory king. There would be risks with a heaven domain expert by his side, therefore he decided to attack Darkness City. There were many reasons for this war. First was a demonstration. Darkness City was a purgatory city with a decent influence in the Eastern Territory, so if the Eastern Territory king destroyed Darkness City, there would be hundreds of powers that wouldn't even need to fight to pay tribute. Therefore, this battle had a very large meaning. It was mainly to shock the mountains, killing the chicken to warn the monkeys. Second was isolation. Even if Atu became a heaven domain expert, he didn't have a foundation. The fortuitous encounter didn't increase his strength, but it didn't increase his intelligence. As long as Atu was isolated in Darkness City, the 4 city lords didn't need to worry about their influence being threatened. The third was Darkness City's weakness. The Darkness City's city lord was heavily injured and the city was at its weakest, therefore attacking Darkness City at this time could achieve the greatest result with the smallest price. Darkness City was a purgatory city that had been in operation for many years. The resources inside were enough for the 4 city lords to drool over. In this situation where everyone took what they needed, this war was launched like this. Chu Tian pondered it for a while before asking, "Where is the underground palace?" Atu's little life was in the other side's hands. How could he dare lie or hide anything? He immediately told them the exact location. "You better not be lying to me, lock him up first." Chu Tian ordered Meiji before saying to Shadow, "Bring a few people to look around. If you find anything special, tell me as soon as possible." Chu Tian was very interested in changing Atu's location. A treasure that could make a person change like this, it could be a legendary divine item. Even Chu Tian's heart would beat faster for this kind of thing. Although Darkness City suffered a large loss this time, their harvest was also unprecedented. Flame Demon City, Dark Shadow City, Dark Gold City, and Dark Beast City, the 4 Purgatory World cities would become subsidiary cities of Darkness City. The influence of these 5 cities was enough to monopolize half of the eastern region's resources, which would bring large benefits to Miracle Commerce and the Forest of Chaos. Meiji was appointed as Darkness City's city lord. The Dark Elf Shadow became Darkness City's vice city lord. The 4 forest giants had worked hard this time, so Chu Tian naturally wouldn't mistreat them. The 4 subsidiary cities became the Eternal Forest, Dragon's Ridge, Giant Mountain Range, and Savage Highlands transfer points in the Purgatory World. Although the 4 giants didn't have the right to rule the Purgatory World, they could use these 4 cities as a foundation to obtain resources from the Purgatory World. "Father, Big Brother Chu Tian, I didn't come." Vivian brought several dozen people over. Vivian's strength had increased by leaps and bounds. She was already a spatial expert in the peak 6th true spirit layer. This is the Purgatory World? It really is too mysterious. Lancelot was a bit stunned. "Why did you come?" "Sir Elven King, there's no need to be surprised, I told her to come." Chu Tian nodded to Vivian. These people are innate spatial energy experts that Miracle Commerce has spent a lot of money to train. Now Vivian has formed a spatial engineering team to build the spatial mines, and the most important thing is to create a spatial plank road connecting the spatial crack to the outside world. Whether it was Darkness City, the 4 major cities, or even the Tyrant Barracks, Chu Tian wouldn't personally manage them. This was because Chu Tian was an outsider and each place had its own rules. If he interfered too much, it would disturb the order and Chu Tian would become the target of the underground world. This was not something Chu Tian wanted to see. Miracle Commerce had to establish a headquarters in the Purgatory World, right? Chu Tian felt that the space formed by the spatial mines was the best place. Not only could this place provide Miracle Commerce with precious resources, it could also use the special spatial terrain to create a spatial fortress. The spatial engineering team led by Vivian had the biggest task of creating a spatial plank road in the middle of the spatial crack. This passage only allowed Miracle Commerce's people to enter, and if someone wanted to surround them, they just needed to close the spatial plank road. The natural spatial turbulence from the spatial crack could block all intruders. When the Purgatory World's spatial fortress was finished, Meiji also began to organize Darkness City and the 4 subordinate cities. The Purgatory World had already been infiltrated by Chu Tian's influence. Meiji asked, "Do we need to take care of the fellow locked in the dungeon? Why do we need to take care of him?" Chu Tian shook his head and said, "This fellow is a bit stupid, but his status as the Eastern Territory King is still useful. We need a Heaven Domain expert to support the Purgatory World, so you should push him onto the stage. I believe it will be very helpful to the small and medium powers. Not to mention that this person's body is a bit special, perhaps he has other values." Meiji knit her brows. According to her thoughts, this fellow should be killed, but Chu Tian was thinking even further. Chu Tian wanted to rule the entire Eastern Territory and even the entire Purgatory World. Chu Tian wasn't afraid of raising a tiger because with Lancelot and the other large characters here, this fellow didn't pose a threat and didn't dare pose a threat. Shadow had already returned at this time. According to the information ATU provided, we have indeed found an underground ruin. "Good, very good, we have to personally take a look." Chu Tian said to Lancelot and the others, "I'm afraid we'll have to trouble everyone again." How could this be considered trouble? How could the 4 of them not be interested in ATU's fortuitous encounter? Perhaps there would be a special harvest. So they readily agreed without even thinking about it. Chu Tian led the 4 of them to the location. Chapter 559. The Purgatory World was divided into 5 regions. Because the shape of the Purgatory World wasn't regular, the 5 regions were all different in size and space. The central region was without a doubt the largest, with 50% of the intelligent races in the Purgatory World as well as the 2 most famous great demon overlords. The other 4 regions were a bit smaller. The underground palace was near the central region and it didn't look strange from the outside. It was covered by several mountain ranges and there wasn't anything strange around it. The entrance to the ancient ruins looked very simple, like it was an ancient ruin that could be seen everywhere. Chu Tian led the 4 giants to begin their exploration. The few of them first used the pulse reading technique to examine the surrounding area. In the end, they discovered that the terrain of this place was also extremely mediocre. Furthermore, there was not a single earth spirit vein that passed through this place. In this kind of place, not to mention the legendary divine medicine, they reckoned that even ordinary spirit medicine would not be able to grow here. Thunder's Fury's expression was not good. "It seems like we've been tricked by that fellow. It's impossible for a heaven-stealing treasure to appear in this kind of place." Burst Claw and Deathwing were filled with rage. What kind of noble status did they have? They were actually tricked by a lowly demon, running all the way to this damn place where even birds wouldn't shit. They definitely couldn't let them off. Lancelot was not in a rush to express his position. He looked at Chu Tian beside him and asked, "What do you think?" Chu Tian didn't believe that ATU would trick him. ATU indeed didn't seem like someone who cultivated step by step to the Heaven Domain realm, and his physique was a bit strange, so ATU's words should be believable. There's no need to rush to a conclusion, let's take a look first. What else could they do? Since they were here, they couldn't just leave without taking a look, right? The underground palace was very simple, but the space was large enough, so it was no wonder ATU was trapped inside. But this bit of space didn't count for anything to Chu Tian because Chu Tian had the Vision Domain Divine Sense and the Little Fox's Divine Eye, so it didn't take much effort to figure out the surroundings. At the same time, he found the place where ATU said he found the Divine Herb. When Chu Tian walked in, his vision was filled with over 100 strange altars. These altars were around 30 meters tall and there were all kinds of strange runes and totems on the surface. According to Chu Tian's guess, it should be the style of the ancient heaven race. This also meant that this palace had existed here for at least several tens of thousands of years. ATU said he found that strange herb of unknown origin here. Let's go up and take a look. As Chu Tian spoke, he floated up. When he stood on the ancient altar, he found that there was a groove on the surface of the altar. It was filled with a grayish-white substance. When he grabbed a handful and examined it carefully, he discovered that it was some sparse mottled crystal sand. Lancelot knit his brows. "This is—" Chu Tian replied, "This is a kind of spiritual earth." Deathwing didn't agree with Chu Tian's point of view. "This is clearly a crystallized substance. How could it be spiritual earth?" Spiritual earth, as the name implied, was a kind of top-grade soil used to cultivate heaven and earth treasures. In normal situations, spiritual earth was dug out from the depths of a spirit vein. After being nurtured by the spirit vein for thousands or even tens of thousands of years, it was a kind of super soil. But spiritual earth was still soil in the end. Once it crystallized, it meant that its energy was solidified and it was hard to absorb, so naturally it couldn't be considered spiritual earth. Spiritual earth is divided into grades. This kind of spiritual earth is a top-grade spiritual earth with strong energy, but because it has been abandoned for too long, the energy has solidified into crystal sand. Chu Tian didn't seem like he wanted to delve deeper into this matter. He looked around at the altars. The altars in this underground palace are all filled with a layer of spiritual earth. If my guess isn't wrong, this should be a special plantation. This is a plantation? Isn't this a bit too strange? Lancelot looked around and said, "Even if the crystal sand on the altars is made of spiritual earth, each altar can only grow one herb. One is enough." Chu Tian bent down and continued to dig the crystal sand. This crystal sand seemed to be layered. The top layer was dry and rough, while the middle layer was smooth and warm. When Chu Tian dug out the bottom layer of crystal sand, Chu Tian was surprised to find that the bottom layer of crystal sand was dark red in color. Really strange. What was this thing? Chu Tian picked up a handful of dark red crystal sand and placed it in front of the little fox. "Help me see what this is made of." The little fox licked it and carefully tasted it before swallowing it into its stomach. It revealed a doubtful expression and then smacked its lips a few times, carefully tasting it for a few seconds. Something that Chu Tian didn't expect happened. The little fox suddenly gave a loud cry and jumped up from Chu Tian's body. It was like an unlucky child that had accidentally eaten 10 chili peppers, jumping up and down from the spiciness as it rolled around on the ground. The Elven King asked in a surprised voice, "Is it poisoned?" "Impossible." Chu Tian was also very shocked by the little fox's performance. The little fox had never acted this strangely before. "I've never seen a poison that could poison it before." The little fox danced around for a full 5 minutes before slowly recovering. It spat out its tongue while excitedly gesturing at Chu Tian a few times. Chu Tian's eyes lit up. "You're sure it's correct?" The little fox nodded to express that it was correct. Burst Claw could not understand the communication method between Chu Tian and the little fox, so he couldn't help asking, "What did you guys find?" "Everyone, don't be anxious. We can't confirm it for now, so we still need to verify it. But once it's confirmed, we'll have made a large profit this time." Chu Tian suddenly saying this made the 4 giants confused. Chu Tian pointed at the ground and added, "I think there's a space under the palace and our answer should be inside. Everyone follow me." Chu Tian released his divine sense in all directions and finally found a secret passage in the middle of the altar. Without saying anything else, he immediately led the 4 giants down the passage. Such strong energy fluctuations. Before the 5 of them even reached the end, they felt something strange. There seemed to be a very strong energy fluctuation here, and this energy fluctuation was something that even Deathwing had never seen in his 10,000 years of life. The aura it was filled with made even Titan, Behemoth, and Giant Dragon feel a strong pressure. What was going on? The 4 giants finally realized that this underground palace was not as simple as they imagined. When Chu Tian brought the 4 of them out of the exit, a naturally formed underground cave appeared in front of them. This cave looked very spacious, and the most eye-catching thing was that there were more than 100 blood-red crystal thorns that pierced directly into the scarlet sea that filled the lava cave from the upper level. These over 100 giant blood-red crystal spikes should be the over 100 altars in the underground palace. The altars used these crystal spikes to form a scarlet sea and then absorbed some kind of energy from the sea, using it to cultivate the elixirs on the altars. This was a cultivation method he had never seen before. At least Chu Tian had never heard of such a strange method before. What is this? Deathwing stood on the platform and his long and narrow dragon eyes stared at the scarlet sea under the cave. It seemed to be a kind of viscous and flowing energy. Why do I feel a strong aura? This aura is actually above a giant dragon's. When Chu Tian faced the Scarlet Ocean, he was finally able to confirm his guess. I finally understand. Thunder's Fury quickly asked, what do you understand? Atu didn't lie. Everything that happened to his body did happen in the underground palace. When Chu Tian said this, his eyes suddenly flashed with a fanatical light. This is a farm that uses demons and gods as food. With this, the four giants were shocked. What did Chu Tian say? A farm that used demons and gods as food? How could this be possible? This was pure whimsical nonsense. You might not believe it, but this is the truth. Do you see the sea under your feet? Chu Tian stared at the red sticky substance under the cave. If my guess isn't wrong, a great desolate era demon god must have fallen here. After the ancient heaven race found this demon god's corpse, they thought of a method to insert over 100 energy-absorbing crystal needles into the demon god's body. Then they used these energy-absorbing devices to build an altar and placed top-quality spiritual soil on top of the altar to cultivate herbs. Lancelot seemed to understand a bit. You're saying that the ancient heaven race used the demon god's energy to nourish the herbs, so the herbs they cultivated were filled with demon god's energy? That's right. Chu Tian nodded and continued to explain. The heaven race left for an unknown reason. They took away all the herbs they cultivated, but they left behind a seedling that hadn't grown yet. Tens of thousands of years later, Atu accidentally fell into this underground palace, and this seedling had matured after tens of thousands of years, so it was filled with the essence of the demon god's energy. Therefore, after Atu ate this herb, his body immediately changed, becoming completely different, and his strength greatly increased. This sounded very strange. But it was the only reasonable explanation. In fact, the first time Chu Tian discovered Atu's powerful recovery ability, he had already connected Atu to the divine servant. But this was still unimaginable, so he didn't dare make a judgment. Now there was no doubt. It was no longer important how the heaven race did it. Now Chu Tian knew that in the Scarlet Sea, there was a high chance that the demon god's corpse was hidden there. How precious was the demon god's body? When Chu Tian was in the Central State Trial Tower, he only had a bit of God's blood and a few bones, but it was enough for him to create a powerful monster like the Divine Servant. If he could obtain a complete one, how much help would it be to Chu Tian's research? Chapter 560. The Scarlet Sea was formed from the blood essence and flesh of an ancient demon god. The heaven race's altar absorbed the energy from within, allowing the herbs it cultivated to have the characteristics of a demon god. Adu had coincidentally taken this herb, therefore his body had undergone a large change and he was now in existence similar to a divine servant. Of course, compared to a true divine servant, Atu didn't have the power of a demon god, it only increased his body's regenerative abilities. Releasing his divine sense, Chu Tian decided to explore the Scarlet Sea, but as soon as his divine sense touched the Scarlet Sea, it was sucked in like water touching a sponge, disappearing without a trace. Then, without any warning, a large number of ripples suddenly appeared in the Scarlet Sea. Lancelot's face sunk. Be careful, there's something wrong. It seems like we've touched something. A few silhouettes gradually appeared in the Scarlet Sea, like blood-red sculptures rising from the Scarlet Sea. They looked like some kind of terrifying and ugly demon with 3 faces and 6 arms. Their faces were ferocious, and each of them released a strong aura. This seemed like the remnant spirit of an ancient demon god had evolved over tens of thousands of years. Then with the ancient demon god's blood essence as the foundation, it finally formed these monsters. The little fox was simply the natural nemesis of these monsters formed from energy and blood essence. How were these monsters? In the little fox's eyes, they were no different from supplements. The little fox didn't need Chu Tian's reminder to take the initiative to make a move. It first spat out a large amount of purple energy from its mouth, instantly covering several dozen scarlet demons. Then it suddenly sucked in, and these monsters' bodies seemed like they were being pulled by a large force, immediately being pulled and twisted. Finally, a part of them turned into a blood mist that was sucked into the little fox's stomach. It seemed like it wasn't difficult at all. When Chu Tian thought that the little fox would be able to deal with it, something unexpected happened. The little fox sucked in a breath and its body turned red. It gave a large sneeze and specks of scarlet energy sprayed everywhere. This was just the beginning. It was like the little fox had sucked in a large mouthful of pepper powder. Tears flowed down as it wildly sneezed. This won't do. Even if it was in existence like the little fox, it still hadn't matured, so it couldn't directly absorb the demon god's blood essence. At this time, the demons in the Scarlet Sea began to move. Javelins or bows appeared in their hands, and a wave of fierce attacks quickly attacked Chu Tian's group. Deathwing's left wing suddenly swung forward and the left wing quickly grew larger. It was like a giant barrier that blocked everyone behind it. Poochie! Poochie! When the blood arrows and blood spears hit Deathwing, there was no explosion or explosion. There was only the sound of corrosive acid hitting the ground. Deathwing felt a powerful and strange power enter his body. The place where the left wing was hit began to have a scarlet color spreading, and wherever this power spread, all senses would disappear. Deathwing's expression changed. He tried to resist it, but he found that the more he resisted, the faster it spread. This energy was like a flame that could ignite any substance or energy it touched. When he tried to resist it, it actually sped up its spread. How could this be? Deathwing felt like he had completely lost control of his body. After this terrifying corrosive power invaded his body, it even began to spread to his mind and soul. A powerful will seemed to be reverberating in his mind, trying to enslave Deathwing's thoughts and will. Chu Tian found Deathwing's situation. It seemed like the Scarlet Sea was sealing a demon. Chu Tian had obtained a fragment of the ancient demon god's memory in Central State, so he had a bit of understanding of the ancient demon gods. Although the gods and demons were similar, there was still a difference in their essence. Chu Tian's divine blood could purify everything and break any curse, but the demon blood had a terrifying curse power. Just a single drop could kill countless beings. Nidhogg's current state was the result of being contaminated by the demon blood. The demon blood contained a powerful curse energy that could corrode one's body, spirit energy, and even one's soul. If one was completely controlled by the demon blood, although they would obtain stronger strength, it was very likely they would lose their consciousness and become a puppet under the demon's consciousness. Lancelot released his hourglass source spirit when he saw this. Time energy was poured into Deathwing's body and the spreading demon blood energy was instantly pushed back, finally leaving Deathwing's body. Such a sinister power. Deathwing was careless and he became vigilant. We can't touch these attacks, otherwise the consequences will be unimaginable. The demons continued to attack. The demons weren't considered strong, being in the 8-9th true spirit layer, but there were too many of them. Adding in their special nature, as long as one touched them, they would be corroded by the demon blood, so it was very troublesome to deal with them. Thunder's fury released several hundred bolts of lightning that were as thick as his arms, instantly forming a net of lightning on the surface of the Scarlet Sea. Countless bolts of lightning interweaved with each other and continued to split apart, making the net become denser and denser, attempting to suppress all the monsters underneath it. The Titan's divine thunder was not something normal lightning could compare to. This kind of lightning was an innate ability of the Titan clan, and the Titan's divine thunder was a kind of innate lightning. Thunder's fury had been nurtured for thousands of years, so even a giant dragon couldn't withstand his lightning. Who would have thought that at this time, the scarlet demons would charge into the lightning net like moths to a flame? Although their bodies were evaporated by the Titan's divine thunder, they could still release large amounts of blood mist on the surface of the divine thunder, making the originally blue and purple lightning gradually turn into a scarlet-red color. Thunder's fury discovered that he was gradually unable to control his own energy, because the entire lightning net had turned into a strange scarlet lightning flashing. A completely new will was controlling the lightning, causing the countless lightning bolts to weave together, gradually forming a blood-red lightning giant. The demons were still charging into it like moths to a flame. Each time they collided, each time the demons shattered, it would give this new monster even more strength. Deathwing condensed 2 thick death dragon flames in his hands and shot them at the monster's chest. The dragon flames instantly evaporated a third of the monster's body and Burst Claw tore the remaining parts of the monster to pieces. There was no effect. After this monster was defeated, it reformed in a short period of time. It should be because it had absorbed Deathwing and Burst Claw's power, but its aura had become even stronger. Lancelot immediately shouted when he saw this, "Stop, our attacks have no effect at all. It will only make them stronger." Deathwing, Thunder's Fury, and Burst Claw knit their brows. They had never met this kind of troublesome matter before. These creatures were far more difficult to deal with than they had imagined. These were several top heaven domain experts, but they actually had a feeling of helplessness. The countless scarlet demons continued to fuse with each other, absorbing Deathwing, Thunder's Fury, and Burst Claw's power. Now their strength was increasing by leaps and bounds. Did they have to retreat? "I have a method that we can try." When the others felt helpless, Chu Tian took out a scroll and released the 18 divine servants. With a thought, he controlled the 18 divine servants to fly out at the same time, and each divine servant released a golden light. The golden light on the 18 divine servants connected together, forming a giant seal in the air. Demon-breaking seal. The giant seal formed by the 18 divine servants slammed into the giant, and an incredible thing happened. The giant's body was like an iceberg that had been hit as it suddenly shattered to pieces. Large amounts of fragments fell down, turning into nothingness when they fell into the Scarlet Sea. What was going on? Deathwing and the others couldn't understand no matter how hard they tried. How could Chu Tian easily defeat a monster that they couldn't deal with just a few weak puppet soldiers? The divine servants were refined by Chu Tian using a large amount of ancient god's essence blood. Although they weren't considered strong at this stage, there was an ancient god's power sealed within each body, so the demon blood couldn't corrode them. When they attacked, they released the power of the ancient god's blood, destroying the structure of the scarlet demons, allowing them to be easily destroyed. The divine servants returned to Chu Tian's side. The dangerous scarlet demons had been eliminated for now, but these creatures couldn't be killed. They wouldn't take long to revive, and they basically wouldn't die in this territory. Chu Tian said, "The divine servants aren't afraid of the demon blood's invasion, but they are still too weak. We can't deal with them again. Time is limited. Open a path and I'll see if I can fish something out." Deathwing, Thunder's Fury, Burst Claw, and the Elven King released their domains together, instantly opening a path in the middle of the Scarlet Sea. Chu Tian controlled the divine servants to enter. The ancient demon's corpse was sealed under the Scarlet Sea, but its flesh had already melted into the Scarlet Sea. When Chu Tian was feeling disappointed that he couldn't find anything, he suddenly found large amounts of dark green crystals at the bottom of the Scarlet Sea. The ancient demon's bones. It had already been crystallized? Chu Tian used a tremendous amount of effort to control the divine servants to fish out several pieces, but this was already his limit. The 4 giants couldn't maintain the path and the scarlet demons were reviving. They could only do this. Now that we've obtained the items, let's leave this place. Chu Tian wrapped up the large demon god bone crystals that the divine servants had fished out and immediately used spatial energy to bring everyone out of the cave, instantly returning to the underground palace. Although they didn't get the divine medicine they wanted, with these crystal bones, this trip wasn't in vain. These things were left behind by the ancient demons and were very rare on the continent. Even Deathwing and the others didn't know how to use them, so they could only let Chu Tian study them first. Chapter 561. After a few days in Miracle City. Meng Qingwu's office had been expanded several times and now it had become the most advanced information center on the continent. She only needed to stay in this 1,500 square meter area to control Miracle City and Miracle Commerce. She could deploy troops and give orders, and it would all be completed in a timely manner. Meng Yingying was by Meng Qingwu's side, listening to the latest production orders. Miracle City's factories had already covered the Great Zhou Country, the Great Summer Country, and parts of the Northern Militant Country. There was also a very complete industrial area in the forest, as well as several intelligent factories that were being built with the elves. Meng Yingying was Miracle City's production minister. She needed to manage the production progress and product quality of each factory, coordinating the supply of resources, technical assistance, and etc. Although there was smart brain managing it, it was still a heavy job. Our spiritual research has recently had a large breakthrough. Meng Qingwu said to her little sister, "We need to speed up the construction of the spiritual tower. The spiritual technology is a very important explosive point for our miracle commerce." Meng Yingying's eyes lit up because the spiritual technology was a good thing. The trial field and the arena were built based on this technology, and now that they had a large breakthrough, it was something worth looking forward to. She immediately patted her chest and promised, "Elder sister can be assured, I will personally supervise it. And with you here, I can be assured." Meng Qingwu's position in miracle commerce was rising day by day. Whether it was Vivian, Nangong Yun, Dolores, or the others, they all respected her from the bottom of their hearts. Now there was a gap between a superior and a subordinate. Other than Chu Tian, only Yingying was her closest person. This sometimes made Meng Qingwu feel lonely, but she understood that in order to control the aircraft carrier that was miracle commerce, this sacrifice was necessary. "Yingying, how is your progress with Chu Tian?" Meng Yingying didn't expect her sister to mention this matter, and her little face immediately turned slightly red. "He's still the same. That guy stayed in the underground world for so long, and he finally came back a few days ago. He didn't even accompany me for half a day before he ran off to do some strange things in seclusion." Meng Qingwu stroked her sister's long hair lovingly. "Silly girl, don't you know him? He looks unrestrained, but that's just what he shows on the outside. He's actually a very focused and serious person. I don't know what he wants to do, but I'm sure he has his own ideas and ideals. You have to take the initiative and hold on to them tightly." Meng Yingying stared at Meng Qingwu and said, "I think you are the one who understands Chu Tian the most in the world." Meng Qingwu coughed. "What are you talking about?" Chu Tian said that he's prepared to hold a wedding at a good time. Meng Yingying was afraid of being heard by others. She leaned over and carefully said, "Why don't you marry him together with me? Anyway, the two of us are as close as one person. We definitely won't separate." "Marry him together? Hey, I can't bring myself to do that." Meng Qingwu spat and revealed a rare shy expression. "He didn't do anything and wants to buy one get one free. How could there be such a cheap thing in this world?" Meng Yingying loudly shouted, "Elder sister, your face is red. You little girl, see if I don't teach you a lesson." Meng Qingwu and Meng Yingying began to play around. If the people under Miracle City saw this, they would be stunned. The cold and dignified female city lord also had a cute and lively side like a child. The two of them played around for a while. Nangong Yun suddenly came in. "Elder sister Qingwu, the Elven King and the others are here. Can we start now?" Meng Qingwu remembered that there was an important meeting to be held. She immediately fixed her clothes and hair. "Have the four lords come to the City Lords Fort's conference room. I'll be there in 10 minutes. The forest of chaos was gradually becoming more orderly. The 1,000-year separation of the four great powers was gradually changing. The conflicts and excess energy of the forest races should not be used on internal strife. Rather, they should be used on development and external expansion. If it was said that it was too far before and they didn't have this kind of condition, then with the appearance of miracle commerce, it was time for the Forest of Chaos to undergo a large change. This four-way conference was very important. The conflict between the four giants would end. A new balance and cooperation would be established. Of course, the one holding this conference was Miracle Commerce. Therefore, Miracle Commerce had to be present. But for this important conference, the first city lord Chu Tian's seat was empty. Ever since he came to the Purgatory world, Chu Tian had locked himself up. It was unknown what he was researching. However, although Chu Tian was absent, with Meng Qingwu as the leader, Meng Yingying, Nangong Yun, Dolores, and several other high-level members had already arrived. Many thanks to the four lords for coming to Miracle City to discuss the future development plan. Meng Qingwu had her usual capable style, not saying too many polite words and directly entering the main topic. We've collected data and found that there are over 300 cities in the Forest of Chaos. The population of the cities is around 25% of the Forest of Chaos population, with a total population of around 600 million. Meng Qingwu said this, and she used the mirror to show a table, showing the power structure of the Forest of Chaos in a fan shape: the Eternal Forest, the Savage Highlands, the Giant Mountain Range, and the Dragon's Ridge have less than 100 cities. The Dragon Lord, who has the most cities, doesn't even have 42 cities, which means that over 2/3 of the forest cities are independent cities, other large powers, or cities with disputed ownership. This data was very convincing. The reason why the Forest of Chaos was so chaotic was because of the complicated power structure of the forest. Although the four giants were the top powers of the forest, strictly speaking, the power they had was not even half of the entire forest. The other powers acted as a buffer between the four giants. It was because they were too far away and out of reach of the four giants, or it was because there was a mysterious underground city that even the four giants did not know about. Therefore, there were many changes in the forest. The various powers were divided and the forest was filled with bandits, creating chaos. Meng Qingwu continued to explain, in terms of resources, population, strength, and other aspects, the Forest of Chaos has the conditions to become an empire-level power. Today, with Miracle City as the core and the four powers working together, I think there is a need to change something. City Lord Meng's words are the truth. When Lancelot heard this, he couldn't help speaking up. Only the chaos in the Forest of Chaos is not something that happened in a day or two. These 10,000 years is not something our alliance can easily change. That's right, there are over 100 races in the Forest of Chaos, and each race's habits and beliefs are different. Between each race, village, tribe, and city, there are conflicts and grudges that cannot be resolved in 100 years. The Dragon Lord had the most right to speak on this issue. Because the Dragon Lord's own race was very small, he ruled over the largest number of cities. Most of these cities came from different races, so rebellions would occur from time to time, giving the Dragon Lord a huge headache. Unless we start a war and cleanse the entire forest, but killing billions of people is easier said than done. The forest is this big, there will be many fish that escape the net. They won't be able to live in peace for several hundred years. Thunder's Fury and Burst Claw did not say anything, but they agreed with Deathwing's point of view. The Forest of Chaos had the potential to become an empire-level power, but it could never become an empire. Not to mention the complicated relationships between the powers in the Forest of Chaos. Even the four giants had a complicated relationship. They could work together for benefits, but it was impossible for them to completely fuse together. How could the elves work together with the spirit beasts? How could the dragon's tomb lich work together with the Traiants who worshipped life? This was indeed a very difficult task, but for Meng Qingwu, it was a task that had to be completed. The Forest of Chaos had to be unified, otherwise it would be hard for this place to be successful. This was the most important task that Meng Qingwu had set for herself in the next few years. There was heavy resistance. She had to do it. Miracle Commerce's communication, logistics, and transport technology. If we want to display the greatest value in the Forest of Chaos, we need to create a unified environment. Meng Qingwu continued to explain, I think everyone has misunderstood my meaning. Miracle Commerce does not pursue the centralized power of an empire, rather we seek the benefits of the various races and find a suitable standard to reach a consensus. This will allow us to work together and reduce the number of battles and disputes. Only like this will we be able to develop the forest better. The four giants considered this for a bit. If they did not pursue domination and instead pursued consensus, perhaps it would be possible. Now that everyone's benefits were tied together, stabilizing the Forest of Chaos was beneficial to everyone, therefore no one would reject this proposal. Deathwing asked, what is the City Lord prepared to do? It starts with us. Meng Qingwu opened a scroll, Without rules, nothing can be accomplished. The most important task of today's conference is to discuss the bottom line of the alliance and establish several laws to unify the forest. From now on, there will be laws to restrict and follow, so we can reach a consensus and ensure the rights and positions of our 5 sides. Reach a consensus. Using the law to restrict everyone's actions? That's right, the 4 giants were called here today. Meng Qingwu was here to set rules. In a place without rules, there would be no order, and it would be hard to achieve anything. Meng Qingwu was now the ruler of Miracle City. She would not allow this kind of thing to happen. Even if you are the 4 giants, you have to obediently follow the rules. Meng Qingwu had the confidence to do this. Miracle City had the confidence to do this. Lancelot was the first to express his opinion. I agree. The elves were famous for their democracy, and Miracle City's decision would gain the favor of the elves, so the elves would naturally support them. With the support of the Eternal Forest, could the other 3 powers not support them? Chapter 562. Under the leadership of Miracle City's city lord Meng Qingwu, the 4 giants of the Forest of Chaos reached an agreement. The 4 powers, along with Miracle City, would sign a peace treaty and form an alliance. The alliance would be called the Forest Alliance. This was a historical moment for the Forest of Chaos. It meant that the 4 powers of the forest had disappeared and they were now a superpower that existed in the form of an alliance. The Forest Alliance had 3 basic principles. First, they were not allowed to attack or invade each other in any form. After the Forest Alliance was formed, Miracle City would create a smart brain management system for each city. From now on, each city would revolve around the smart brain as the core, and the entire alliance city would be under the supervision of the smart brain. All resource fields would be clearly recorded, and they wouldn't be allowed to attack each other's cities or steal each other's resources. Secondly, if a member of the alliance or a city within the alliance was under attack, the other cities had the obligation to lend a helping hand. After the Forest Alliance was formed, although it was divided into the Elven area, Giant area, Spirit Beast area, Dragon's Ridge area, and Miracle City, they were all partners. When one member was threatened, the other members had the duty to help. If a city was attacked, the neighboring cities had the duty to help, stabilizing the alliance. Third, the Forest Alliance would establish a Forest Parliament. All the major decisions of the Forest Alliance, whether it was internal rewards or punishments, would be decided by the Parliament. The Forest Council had 6 highest seats. The 4 giants each had a seat, and the 2 Miracle City lords each had a seat. Under the Forest Parliament as the highest authority, there were 3 other authorities: the Forest Judicial Court, the Forest Legislative Court, and the Forest Arbitration Court. The Forest Judicial Court was a court that was set up in various cities. It mainly handled civil, criminal, administrative, and other matters. It was to restrict the local authorities and establish legal institutions. Of course, for different races, different cities, and different regions, the laws and regulations needed to be formulated according to the actual situation. The judicial court was only responsible for enforcing the law and conducting trials. The Forest Legislative Court was responsible for making laws. Every city had its own judicial court, and every city had its own legislative court. Other than the principal laws of the alliance, the rest of the laws were divided according to the region, adapting to the various environments and races of the Forest of Chaos. The Forest Arbitration Court was an authority that adjudicated conflicts between cities. If there was a conflict between cities in the alliance, it was illegal for the city lords to report it to their respective leaders. They should directly go to the Forest Parliament and apply for a third-party arbitration to ensure fairness and justice. The arbitration court itself also had a supervisory function. If it discovered that a city or force was overstepping its bounds, it could issue a warning in advance. Meng Qingwu seemed to turn into a master of law in an instant. The alliance between the 3 courtyards was very clear, with each having their own duties and supervising each other. While maintaining a bottom line, it left enough space for the local regions, respecting the local customs and actual situations. If the Forest Alliance system could be successfully implemented, it would greatly improve the chaotic situation in the forest. the four giants signed the Forest Pact. This alliance was officially established. Meng Qingwu saw that the most important matter had been completed, and she let out a sigh of relief in her heart. The four giants easily agreed to the Forest Alliance mainly because they had something to ask of Miracle City. Meng Qingwu was well aware that Miracle City's strength was still too weak. A paper contract wasn't enough to bind them. Once the benefits of breaking the contract was greater than following it, they would most likely leave the alliance without any hesitation. But it did not matter. Now the four giants needed Miracle City. The Forest Alliance wouldn't break in a short period of time. Meng Qingwu firmly believed that Miracle City's weak power was only temporary. Once the Forest Alliance was established, it would have a large momentum that would shake the forest. The other powers or independent cities, for their own safety and benefits, would definitely join the Forest Alliance. These powers or cities would become members of the Forest Alliance and wouldn't be subordinates of the four giants. This was a large difference. Just like what Meng Qingwu had said, there were over 300 cities in the Forest of Chaos and the four giants only controlled a third of them. Miracle City had formed the Forest Alliance with the four giants. How large was their momentum? If they could take in 200 cities and become members of the Forest Alliance, the influence of the four giants would be diluted and the alliance wouldn't be as reliant on the four giants as before. Miracle City had a high status in the Forest Alliance. These cities joined the Forest Alliance and not Miracle City, but in fact they were led by Miracle City. Miracle City had real benefits and the world didn't think it was greedy. Miracle City had real power and the world didn't think it was overbearing. Miracle City was becoming stronger and the world didn't think it was a threat. This was the outstanding wisdom of the young miss. If Miracle City directly subdued the small and medium powers and increased the number of cities, it would definitely arouse suspicion. But with this method and using the name of the alliance's dukes, the situation was completely different. The development style of a power or a country was closely related to the leader. The young miss was the same as Chu Tian. She didn't have a strong desire for control and possession. Therefore, even if Miracle Commerce was strong enough, they wouldn't go around attacking cities and expanding their territory because Miracle Commerce didn't need to do this at all. Miracle Commerce was a technological power. Why did they need to occupy others? It was enough to use their products and technology. After the Forest Alliance was formed, Meng Qingwu discussed the specifics of development. Miracle City's cooperation with the four giants increased day by day. With Miracle Bank's support, the Titan Bank, the Giant Dragon Bank, and the Behemoth Bank were established in their respective areas. The three large banks couldn't compare to the Elven Bank in terms of competitiveness, but in their respective forest cities, they still had a lot of room for development. The three giants were all ambitious. As long as they had Miracle City's technology, not only would they be able to manage their own territories, they would also be able to see further. They would no longer be limited to the Forest of Chaos. Rather, they would be able to jump out of the forest and head towards the boundless continent. The richest dragon lord of the Forest of Chaos had money, and this giant dragon didn't have any hobbies other than making more money. When the Giant Dragon Bank was established, it directly took out 5 million source stones from the Dragon Palace. It began to plan with Miracle City to create the largest merchant and mining team in the Forest of Chaos, plundering wealth from all over the world. After the Titan Bank was established in the Giant Mountain Range, it prepared a large amount of money and cooperated with Miracle Commerce, preparing to create the largest industrial area in the Forest of Chaos. The Giant Mountain Range had over 100 million giants, subgiants, and dwarves, representing the highest level of manufacturing in the Forest of Chaos and even the continent. The Giant Mountain Range was also rich in resources, but there were many resources that couldn't be mined before. Now that they cooperated with Miracle City, everything became possible. Compared to the other two, the Savage Highlands expansion was more direct and unyielding. The Behemoth Bank was established to collect large amounts of military funds for the Savage Highlands, providing loans to the spirit beasts, recruiting large amounts of soldiers, and buying all kinds of Miracle City's advanced equipment. After the spirit beasts obtained powerful equipment and supplies, they began to head into the unknown forest. They hunted down powerful fierce beasts and swept through the savage tribes, even going out of the forest and subduing the nearby small countries. They used war to raise war and become rich from war. The spirit beasts had population and cheap battle strength, only they had the ability to expand out of the four giants. Other than that, the Purgatory world was also an area the Forest Alliance placed a lot of importance on. Chu Tian sent Vivian to build the spatial fortress very quickly. It could be used very soon. Miracle City's transport equipment and source energy weapons had already arrived in Darkness City. At the same time, they absorbed several groups of Purgatory World's demon warriors and Dark Gnome engineers, allowing the Surface World and Purgatory World to exchange resources. Miracle City was just like a large spider. This large spider was weaving a complex web that connected the entire Forest of Chaos. This kind of fast development was enough to make anyone raise their eyebrows. However, the creator of all of this, Chu Tian, never showed himself. This was because during this period of time, Chu Tian had an even more important matter to do. Miracle City's underground research base. Chu Tian locked himself in the laboratory and worked hard over the past few days, mainly doing several things. The first was to extract the spinal cord from the divine spine bone, the second was to extract the essence from the demon crystal bone, and the third was to develop a source energy array that could be used to process these top-grade materials. The demon crystal bone was found in the Purgatory World's underground palace, and the divine spine was given to Chu Tian by the ancient god in Central State Tower. These two things were taken from the body of a demon god, so they were definitely top-grade materials that could only be found. Chu Tian couldn't use the divine spine or the demon bone alone. It contained too much demonic and divine energy, and a mortal body couldn't withstand it, so they would have to face the danger of exploding. This was why Chu Tian kept this precious material and didn't use it. There was a method recorded in the ancient gods' memories. The demonic and divine energy could neutralize each other. As long as there was a good method and a good control, there would be a balance between the two, allowing the body to withstand it. Chu Tian had studied it for many days, and now he was prepared to use the demonic and divine bone marrow to refine a pill. But even if the two could neutralize each other, it still contained a powerful demonic and divine energy, which was enough to cause a large impact on the body. There was a possibility that before the transformation was complete, the body wouldn't be able to withstand it and would collapse. Chu Tian considered this risk and chose the 5-colored celestial fruit as the main material because the 5-colored celestial fruit had a strong regenerative and healing ability, which was enough to minimize the risk. This pill refinement was very important, and its success would directly affect Chu Tian's future. Chapter 563. In the crystal trough in front of Chu Tian, there were two different colored solutions. One was white gold and the other was black purple. They were currently releasing energy with crackling sounds, and there seemed to be lightning moving within them, containing an unimaginable amount of energy. These two solutions were the essences extracted from the bodies of gods and demons. Chu Tian was very clear on how much energy this thing contained. Even the pill furnace he was preparing was something Miracle Commerce had bought from Thunder's Fury. It was made from top-quality level 4 materials and was so tough that even the Titan's divine thunder couldn't damage it at all. There were several dozen arrays used in the alchemy this time. Other than the core refining array that Chu Tian needed to personally control, there were also many stabilizing, strengthening, and blessing arrays that were controlled by Smart Brain with source stones as the source energy. The preparations were almost complete now. They could begin now. Chu Tian threw several dozen precious materials into the pill furnace as if they didn't cost anything, and the source energy arrays in all directions activated at the same time. The runes lit up one by one, forming a source energy array. The source energy arrays lit up one by one, forming an even larger source energy array. Punk, punk, punk. Waves of strong energy fluctuations reverberated through the laboratory as countless runes and runes crawled over the surface of the pill furnace like snakes. When the various supporting arrays were finished, Chu Tian opened the refining array. The materials in the pill furnace began to be refined, and there was the roar of a storm as the energy in the precious materials was activated by the refining array. Chu Tian's expression was very calm as he refined for several minutes. When the roar of the storm became smaller, Chu Tian threw a 5-colored immortal fruit into the pill furnace. The moment the 5-colored immortal fruit entered the pill furnace, large amounts of auspicious phenomena appeared in the pill furnace. 5-colored clouds, bells and cranes danced, and surging immortal spiritual energy instantly filled the entire laboratory. The pill furnace shook several times more violently than before. If it wasn't for the extraordinary materials of the furnace, it would have exploded on the spot. The herbs in the furnace were all priceless top-grade herbs, especially the level 3 immortal herb 5-colored immortal fruit. If any one of them was taken out, it could be used as a precious main ingredient. But now it was being used as a supplementary ingredient. What kind of extravagant waste was this? Chu Tian gradually felt it was a bit strenuous as the pill furnace shook more and more violently. It was like a trapped ancient beast was wildly smashing its cage inside the pill furnace. This power was very strong. It was not inferior to several Berserk Peak 9th True Spirit Layer experts. It was a good thing that Chu Tian had set up enough arrays to suppress them. However, letting this power charge around was not a solution. It would greatly slow down the pill formation and affect the quality of the pill. Chu Tian released a flame from each of his hands. The blue and white flames were like 2 dragons that quickly wrapped around the shaking alchemy furnace. Then the flames seeped through the cracks of the alchemy furnace, and the strong netherworld ghost flame immediately suppressed the shaking of the alchemy furnace. It was like a giant block of ice had sealed the alchemy furnace. The netherworld ghost flame could effectively suppress the restless power of the immortal pill. Chu Tian quickly activated the refining array, refining the materials in the pill furnace. Finally, the pill furnace calmed down and Chu Tian waved his right hand. The lid of the pill furnace was opened and a rainbow-colored light filled the field of view. The vast and auspicious immortal spiritual energy could be felt in the entire laboratory. Several flood dragons were roaring in the air. It was enough to make anyone raise their eyebrows. Too strong. This was the scene of an immortal pill being born. This was a mid-grade level 3 immortal pill that was very close to high grade. Even if it was given to someone in the peak 9th True Spirit Layer, it would be enough to increase their chances of breaking through their bottleneck. Not to mention someone like Chu Tian who hadn't even reached the spirit transformation realm. If he directly took it, it wouldn't be strange for his cultivation to increase by 2 layers. What Chu Tian wanted to refine was not an immortal pill. This immortal pill was only a half-finished product for Chu Tian. Chu Tian was not in a rush to take out the immortal pill. Rather, he used the netherworld ghost flame to wrap around the immortal pill and let it sink back into the pill furnace. Then he waved his hands to control the equipment, and 2 jars of divine and demonic essence were poured into the pill furnace. The 3 materials were instantly mixed together. The pill furnace closed once again. A new round of refinement was about to begin. If the other alchemists of the continent saw Chu Tian's method of refining pills, their eyes would pop out of the pill furnace. There had never been an alchemist who had used a large amount of resources to refine a peerless pill. This pill was not the finished product, but rather a half-finished product. To be more accurate, it was just a material. Chu Tian used the pill as the main material and the demonic god's solution as the supplementary material. With the 3 combined, he began to refine again. Using a pill to refine a pill, this kind of shocking method could only be achieved by a whimsical and skilled alchemist. This was because the essence of refining a pill was a process of removing impurities, fusing the essence, causing a qualitative change, and sublimation. Extracting the essence from normal materials was a very complicated matter, not to mention the fusion, qualitative change, and sublimation process. The composition of a pill was very complex, and the various components were all stable. There had never been a case of someone breaking down a pill and using it as a material to refine another pill. Chu Tian was simply a madman. The moment the immortal pill shattered in the pill furnace, it immediately caused a rumble inside the pill furnace. The entire pill furnace rumbled violently, and the violent energy passed through the incomparably firm furnace walls, causing various instruments in the laboratory to explode one after another. Then, it crashed into the walls in all directions, causing a large number of cracks. Chu Tian used the Starlight Immortal Body's defensive power to block this attack. He did not even blink as he stared at the pill furnace and continued to control the refining array. The demonic god's essence merged with the broken pill in the pill furnace and finally underwent another incredible change. The pill fragments dissolved and the demonic god's essence solidified. Following that, it was like a balloon as it continued to expand. It was like a newborn placenta that was wildly growing at an incredible speed. The pill furnace let out a series of groans and the furnace walls seemed to give off a cracking sound. Chu Tian's divine sense found that there were many small cracks on the pill furnace. If this continued, there would be a large explosion. Once the energy in the pill furnace went out of control, not only would it explode into the sky, half of the laboratory would be heavily damaged. He had to stabilize it. Otherwise, all his previous efforts would be wasted. Chu Tian's body exploded with an explosion. He released an even stronger flame and formed a clone that charged at the pill furnace. The clone not only gathered all the netherworld ghost flames, it also gathered all of Chu Tian's divine sense. It charged forward like this and the entire pill furnace was filled with flames. The netherworld ghost flames seeped into the pill furnace through the cracks, forming a barrier between the pill furnace and the materials. The entire alchemy furnace now looked like a furnace made of flames. Chu Tian was multitasking. He used his divine sense to strengthen the pill furnace while using his spirit energy to control the refining array. He saw that the cracks on the surface of the furnace were still slowly increasing and the energy inside was becoming stronger. The refining process was slowly and steadily continuing. Waves of energy were already spreading through the entire underground base. Even the slowest person would be able to sense the existence of this power. This energy was just too terrifying. Even if Deathwing and the others were here, their expressions would change. What kind of terrifying experiment was the City Lord doing? If he failed, not only would the underground base be destroyed, the City Lord's life would also be hard to keep. When everyone was feeling uneasy, Chu Tian's refining process had reached a critical point. The pill furnace was already covered in spider webs of cracks and the netherworld ghost flames couldn't hold on for much longer. Not good. It would definitely explode like this. Chu Tian felt that the refinement in the furnace was almost complete, but the thing being refined couldn't form a pill for a long time. This was something that couldn't be helped. The pill furnace was already seriously damaged and the thing inside was too strong. How could it easily form a pill? If the medicinal energy couldn't form a pill, then the furnace would explode and this furnace would have no value. Now it was the last step. Could it be that it would fail at the pill-forming step? How could anyone be willing? Chu Tian found that the situation was very bad because with the current situation, forming a pill was almost impossible. What to do? How to solve it? Time was of the essence, there was no time to think. Chu Tian suddenly steeled his heart and released the netherworld flame, sending it all into the pill furnace. Large amounts of netherworld flame combined with the medicinal energy in the pill furnace and burned it. He directly used all the medicinal energy and essence in the pill furnace and used the netherworld flame to combine it with the netherworld flame. Now, the entire pill furnace couldn't bear the heavy load and completely exploded. The terrifying shockwave spread in all directions and instantly crushed all the instruments in the laboratory. The walls that were reinforced with special explosion-proof runes were actually as fragile as a piece of paper. The entire laboratory was instantly shattered to pieces. Although the pill furnace had exploded, the things inside the pill furnace had been preserved by a layer of netherworld ghost flame. This was a white-gold, purple-black fusion of aura. The surroundings were filled with specks of seven-colored light. The netherworld ghost flame was like a bubble that wrapped around them. Chu Tian charged forward like an arrow and his arms spread out as he walked into the center of the bubble. At this time, Chu Tian's source spirit was released and his eyes turned pitch black. His body turned into a bottomless black hole and a strong gravitational force pulled in the surrounding energy. In that instant, a wave of power as vast as the ocean surged into his body. Chu Tian hadn't finished forming the pill, but he was using this most direct method to absorb everything. Chapter 564. Chu Tian had done another groundbreaking feat. Unable to condense the pill? No problem. First he used the netherworld ghost flame to seal the medicinal energy, then he used the flame as a furnace and his body as a material to refine it. At the same time, he used the devouring innate skill to skip the step of condensing the pill, or rather, he used his body as a tool to condense the pill. Large amounts of energy poured into his body. Chu Tian directly refined his body. This was without a doubt a very dangerous matter. The human body was very weak, and even the strong behemoth's body would find it hard to endure this kind of destruction. With the starlight immortal body in the perfection realm, Chu Tian's physique and recovery far surpassed humans, but he still couldn't compare to a super fierce beast like the behemoth. The moment the energy surged in, Chu Tian's skin and muscles were torn apart and all the meridians in his body were heavily injured. It was already a miracle that he wasn't torn to pieces on the spot. Several flows of energy attacked Chu Tian's body at an even faster speed. In just a few short breaths, Chu Tian was covered in cuts and bruises from head to toe. This kind of injury was not inferior to being ravaged by several behemoths. His body completely collapsed in an instant. In this dangerous moment, Chu Tian's body was covered in a 7-colored glow. The injured body was quickly recovering under the effect of some kind of energy. Chu Tian's idea was very correct. He had already expected that he wouldn't be able to endure the baptism of this demonic god's power, so he chose to refine an immortal pill with a strong regeneration ability, using the power of the immortal pill to reduce the damage to his body. Chu Tian was currently in a state of destruction, rebirth, destruction, and rebirth. This was an endless cycle. This process was painful, but it completely changed his body. Every drop of blood, every piece of flesh, and every inch of bone was filled with the demonic god's power. Chu Tian's cultivation quickly soared through this process. 6th True Spirit Layer, peak 6th True Spirit Layer, 7th True Spirit Layer, peak 7th True Spirit Layer, 8th True Spirit Layer. This increase was unprecedented for Chu Tian. He immediately jumped several layers of cultivation, reaching the 8th True Spirit Layer. If it wasn't for the fact that most of the energy was used to modify his body, Chu Tian's cultivation would have been able to reach the peak True Spirit realm. Of course, Chu Tian didn't care about the advancement of 1 or 2 levels of cultivation, because for Chu Tian, the advancement of 1 or 2 levels of cultivation didn't have much value. Cultivation could increase at any time, and this kind of opportunity for transformation was indeed very rare. The entire process was intense and short. About an hour later, all the energy had been released. Chu Tian's clothes had long been torn to shreds, and his body seemed to be much stronger than before. Every inch of his skin seemed to be condensed from essence, and every muscle was filled with a powerful explosive power, which faintly flashed with a dazzling radiance. Success! Success! Chu Tian could clearly feel the feeling of being reborn. The power of the gods and devils flowed through his body, from his bones to his blood to his flesh. Everything had undergone a profound change. There was too much commotion in the underground research base. Meng Qingwu was already paying attention to this place. She was very worried about Chu Tian's situation, so she called Dolores and Death Wing, who were in Miracle City, to go to the research base to see Chu Tian's situation. The other high-level members of Miracle Commerce also came. Who would have thought that when they came to the research base, Chu Tian would have already finished everything? He had just changed into a new robe as he walked in front of everyone. Nangong Yun cried out in surprise, "Boss, what happened? How did you change?" Everyone found that Chu Tian's figure was much better than before. His muscles were clearly defined, but not exaggerated. It was filled with a sense of beauty, like a wild leopard with explosive power. His skin was even more delicate than an elf's, and he was 5'8" centimeters taller than before. Chu Tian's appearance wasn't bad, and after this large change, it was even more masculine, doubling his charm. Many female elven researchers couldn't help blushing when they saw Chu Tian. They were all whispering to each other. Chu Tian didn't care about the change in his appearance because he felt he was already handsome enough. Even if he was a bit more handsome, it would just be icing on the cake. Compared to this, What he really wanted to know was just how much his various aspects had increased after being transformed by the demon and God's essence. Come, we're going to the experimental field. The experimental field's main function was to test the power of various weapons and talisman techniques, therefore there were large amounts of testing tools. Chu Tian first brought over metal dolls. These metal dolls were close to 3 meters tall and each one was made of level 3 memory metal, so they could be evaluated by how damaged they were. Sir City Lord, are you sure you want to use these dolls? Clark was a bit hesitant as he reminded Chu Tian, these dolls are used to test heavy source energy weapons, I've never heard of them being used to test strength. Unless you have a body several dozen times stronger than a barbarian's. Less nonsense, spread them all out. The 10 metal dolls were spread out. Chu Tian's gaze landed on the first puppet. He clenched his fists tightly, and his bones emitted a crackling sound. He did not use any cultivation technique, nor did he use any spirit power. Chu Tian used his pure physical strength to shoot forward like a cannonball and heavily crashed into the puppet's body. With a hong sound, the 10-ton doll's body caved in and it was sent flying several dozen meters away. It rolled several dozen meters away and the metal rubbed against the ground with an ear-piercing sound. 32% damage. A researcher wiped his sweat. Sir City Lord's fist is already close to the first-generation source energy cannon. Everyone revealed looks of shock. The power of a fist was comparable to a source energy cannon? Wasn't this a bit too exaggerated? With Chu Tian's current cultivation base, if he used spirit energy, the destructive power would far surpass the first-generation source energy cannon. However, everyone noticed that when Chu Tian's fist was sent out, it was pure physical strength and the destructive power was purely physical. If his pure physical strength could reach this level, Chu Tian's body wouldn't be much worse than those ancient vicious beasts. Chu Tian shook his head like he wasn't satisfied. His feet kicked off the ground. Chu Tian let out an ear-piercing scream as he jumped up again. His arms were as heavy as mountains as he slammed into the puppet. The front of the puppet caved in and the back bulged out. It was once again sent flying by a terrifying force. 38% damage. Chu Tian's body shot into the air like a slingshot in front of another doll. His right leg slammed down like a battle axe and with a hong-long sound, the doll's head was stuffed into its chest and everything below its knees was buried in the ground. 40% damage. 43% damage. 47% damage. Chu Tian's strength was steadily increasing and each attack was clearly stronger than the last. When Chu Tian knocked down 5 dolls, he suddenly stopped moving. His eyes released a golden glow and a powerful divine sense was released. Under the divine sense of the remaining 5 dolls, they all gathered in front of him and lined up. What did he want to do? Everyone revealed a puzzled expression. Chu Tian's fists tightly clenched again. This time was different from before as a red glow was released from the depths of his eyes. This red didn't represent flames, rather it was a wild and strong power that looked down on everything. Power. This was one of the 9 powers contained in Chu Tian's source spirit. It was pure physical strength, and pure destructive power. Although Chu Tian could use this power a long time ago, because his body wasn't strong enough, he couldn't bear this kind of violent power. Now he finally met the requirements to use this power. With Chu Tian as the center, the ground 10 meters around him instantly collapsed. It was like a giant dragon had fallen from the sky and stomped down. Actually, this was the momentum created by Chu Tian's leap. He was like a group of behemoths that had broken free, carrying the power to break through all things and shatter all shackles in the world. Ha! Chu Tian gave a deep roar. Although he didn't use any spiritual energy or spirit energy, it sounded like thunder in everyone's ears. It made people feel like they weren't facing a person, but rather a giant dragon in human form, a behemoth in human form. Chu Tian's fist created a dazzling flame as it flew through the air. He heavily slammed into the first metal puppet's body and the metal puppet's body deflated like dough. Even if it twisted to its limit, it still couldn't cushion this power. Finally, with a prng sound, it exploded on the spot. This terrifying force passed through one doll and then hit the second doll. It was also first flattened and then exploded. When it hit the third doll, this terrifying force only slightly weakened, but it still shattered half of the doll's body. It landed on the fourth doll and left a hole in its chest. Finally, it passed through the fifth doll. The fifth puppet was sent flying high into the air by the wild power, and when it fell down, it didn't look like a human anymore. The first three were 100% damaged. The fourth was 90% damaged. The fifth was 70% damaged. The terrifying power released by Chu Tian's fist could already compare to a giant behemoth with a similar cultivation base. Even Miracle Commerce's strongest source energy cannon wasn't that strong. The part that made people feel their blood run cold was still this. Chu Tian didn't use any cultivation technique. It was purely the effect of his physical body's explosive power. In other words, at least in terms of physical strength, Chu Tian had already surpassed the limits of mortals. In the future, even if his spirit energy was exhausted in battle, he could rely on his unimaginably wild strength to fight against any expert of the same level. The power released by this fist was too strong. Chu Tian's fist was already a bloody mess, but there wasn't a single drop of blood coming out. Chu Tian didn't take the initiative to heal himself, and the wound healed itself in a short period of time. In just a short period of time, it returned to normal. This kind of strong recovery ability wasn't something a human should have. Chu Tian had already surpassed the limits of a mortal body. He now had the capital and potential to charge into the heaven domain realm and even higher realms. Chapter 565. Chu Tian's tyrannical strength was enough to leave a deep shock in anyone who personally saw it. Even the Elven King and the Dragon Lord were no exceptions. It wouldn't be strange if he was a behemoth, but Chu Tian was just a human. Humans were born weak. Humans had weak bodies. No matter how much room a human had to grow, they were still humans in essence. Humans relied heavily on spirit energy, and once their spirit energy was used up, they weren't much stronger than normal people. They had never heard of a human with a body as strong as a behemoth. The two of them were high-level heaven domain experts, so they didn't place Chu Tian's current strength in their eyes. Only Chu Tian's growth speed was too shocking, jumping several cultivation levels in just one closed-door cultivation. According to this speed, he would soon become a heaven domain expert. Chu Tian's cultivation could soar like this mainly because he had made rich preparations this time. Not only did Chu Tian absorb the demonic and God's essence, he also used the 5-colored immortal fruit and several other precious immortal herbs as a foundation. It was enough for a peak 9th true spirit layer expert to attack the heaven domain realm, but now it wasn't a big deal for him to increase a few small realms. Actually, Chu Tian's test had just begun. Chu Tian immediately began testing other aspects. For example, Chu Tian found that after absorbing the demonic and God's essence, although it couldn't break all the curses, restrictions, and poisons in the world like the divine blood, most of them had no effect on him. Although it wasn't as corrosive as the demonic blood, it gave Chu Tian a strong ability to resist the corrosive and demonic aura. Other than that, the quality of Chu Tian's spirit energy and the toughness of his meridians had all been greatly increased. This test had never been recorded before, and no one had ever tried it before. This method could be considered very dangerous because whether it was the demonic or God, they were not powerful existences that normal beings could imagine. Trying to obtain the demonic and God's power was already crazy. Even the people of the ancient era's Heaven Clan didn't dare to directly absorb divine and demonic energy. Instead, they constructed special breeding grounds to extract divine and demonic energy to nurture medicinal ingredients. Atu mistakenly entered an ancient breeding field and accidentally ate a precious medicine. Although he didn't die in the end, his appearance had changed beyond recognition. He no longer looked like his original race and had become a pure monster. Chu Tian used the ancient god's memory fragment to analyze the characteristics of gods and demons, and finally found a way to neutralize the power of gods and demons. He never thought that it would be such a huge success. Chu Tian's power had already increased by a lot, and the overall harvest was quite huge. Could a human transform himself to be as strong as the dragon behemoth? The Dragon Lord said somewhat sourly, City Lord Chu Tian's skills are truly superb to actually be able to create such a heaven-defying transformation. Haha, what's a small trick worth mentioning? You guys don't have to be jealous of me, this is just an experiment. Chu Tian directly promised everyone, don't worry, everyone will have a similar opportunity. Everyone was surprised. How could it be done if everyone had a share? Actually, Chu Tian had taken out several pieces of ancient god spine bones from the central state tower. It wasn't something Chu Tian could use up in one go. As for the small amount he had, it clearly wasn't enough for everyone to complete this transformation. After all, Chu Tian's transformation was something others couldn't do, and the immortal grade materials he needed were hard to come by. It wasn't like he couldn't think of another method. Chu Tian did what he said. He brought people to the purgatory world and used the divine servants to mine the ancient demon's essence blood while studying the heaven race's altar. Then he used the transport tower to return to Miracle City and marked out a small area in the Miracle Gardens. He completely imitated the heaven race's cultivation method, using the ancient demon's essence blood to cultivate the herbs. Because the farms were built in the Miracle Gardens, with the ancient tree of life's powerful support, it would take several decades or even 100 years to grow, but it could be completed in 20-30 years. Chu Tian could easily obtain herbs with the ancient demon's power. Because the ancient demon's power was used on the herbs first, the overbearing characteristics were greatly weakened. He only needed to mix a small amount of divine bone solution and use a leaf from the ancient tree of life to replace the 5-colored immortal fruit. Without too much effort, he could refine a weakened version of the demonic god pill. Although the medicinal effects were greatly weakened and it couldn't be as large as Chu Tian's, it could at least allow a low-level life form to become a heaven domain expert, even reaching a higher realm and cultivation. At the same time, it would be a great help to increasing one's cultivation. When Chu Tian was busy with these matters, Meng Qingwu suddenly called him over, saying that there was something very important to discuss. When Chu Tian arrived at the City Lord's castle's main hall, he saw that most of Miracle City's high-level generals were already here. Chu Tian didn't need to guess to know that a battle had happened somewhere when he saw this lineup. The Great Zhou country has sent an urgent report. The Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom has launched a surprise attack on the Three Northern Kingdom Alliance. The Three Kingdom Alliance was caught off guard and have already lost several cities. Most of the northern militant country's prairies have already been occupied by the Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom's army. Meng Qingwu's expression was very serious. From the other side's attack speed and scale, this should be a planned attack. They are even reserving their strength to deal with our reinforcements, which means that our Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom's intelligence gathering is very comprehensive, even knowing the strength of the Forest of Chaos. Chu Tian couldn't help knit his brows. The Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom was a large warring kingdom and one that was rapidly expanding. As a spirit beast kingdom, all of their citizens were soldiers and there were several million trained elites. They basically had the ability to fight with several dozen surrounding small and large countries. The spirit beasts had a strong predatory nature and fast attack speed, allowing them to keep fighting like a pack of wolves. Even among the warring kingdoms of the continent, the Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom was considered high class. For this kind of wild country, they had brought back half of their army to deal with the Three Kingdom Alliance led by the Great Zhou country. This was like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife. The biggest possibility was that the Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom already knew of the existence of the Forest of Chaos. Not only did they know of the existence of the Forest of Chaos, they also knew that in this vast forest, there were several hidden powers that could shake the Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom. This was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that these powers had already formed an alliance and they were the ones supporting the Three Kingdom Alliance. When this news was sent to the Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom, how could the ruler of the Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom not sit on pins and needles? Only this kind of reason would make the various armies give up on the warring kingdoms and attack the Three Kingdom Alliance. But what made everyone confused was, why did the Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom know about the powers in the Forest of Chaos? The Forest of Chaos was over 100,000 miles away from the Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom. The powers in the Forest of Chaos had always been closed off, and there weren't many people in the three kingdoms that knew the situation in the Forest of Chaos. The Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom was in such a faraway place and didn't have any communication or merchants, so how did they know and confirm this news? This was not a small problem at all. Chu Tian thought about it before saying, "It doesn't matter, our battle with the Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom will happen sooner or later. Since they have taken the initiative to attack, we can take advantage of our home advantage. Miracle commerce is no longer the miracle commerce of the past." The four powers of the Forest Alliance are not inferior to warring kingdoms, so we'll just borrow 10 dragons from the Dragon's Ridge and 10 behemoths from the Savage Highlands. With the Eternal Forest and the Giant Mountain Range supporting us, I don't believe we can't defeat the Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom's army. This problem is not as simple as you think. Meng Qingwu shook her head and said, "No matter how strong the local powers in the Forest of Chaos are, they are still local powers and can't form a country. The Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom has over 10 million soldiers. Just this point alone is not something any power in the Forest Alliance can take out. Our only advantage is that we have many experts, but facing absolute numbers, even if we send out large amounts of experts, it will be hard to change the situation. Not to mention that the ones being attacked are the three kingdoms. This does not belong to the Forest Alliance. There won't be any power that would take a large risk to challenge a warring kingdom for us." Meng Qingwu naturally had her reasons for saying this. "There is another thing I'm very worried about. I think the Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom's southern attack is not a coincidence. It must be the result of being incited by a certain power. This inciting power is most likely a power from the forest, and it is a power that is opposing the forest, trying to overthrow the Forest Alliance. It seems like the subterranean world is the most suspicious." Meng Qingwu continued to calmly analyze. "Our team has very little information on the subterranean world, only knowing that there is a powerful spider queen with wild ambitions. They are the ones that don't want to see the Forest Alliance form the most, and it is hard for us to escape their information network. Therefore, whether it is for the Purgatory world, the surface world, or even the subterranean world, the Forest Alliance is a thorn in their flesh. The Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom is just the first move they will use to move the Forest Alliance, but I have a feeling that it won't be their only move." Chu Tian nodded. "The young Miss analysis is very reasonable. Then what else does the young Miss think we need to prepare for? If internal strength isn't enough, we can borrow external strength. Since ancient times, people have followed this path. The Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom is a very strong external power, but it isn't enough to shake the Forest Alliance. They are only trying to attract our attention. If the instigator of this matter is the subterranean world, they will definitely bribe all the large and small powers in the forest to stab us in the back. At the same time, they will join forces with the Purgatory world to set fire to our backyard and attack our Purgatory world forces. That's right, this is what we can think of." Chu Tian also said, "I believe that the subterranean world and the insect queen have existed for so many years, so the underground spirit insects have close relations with the forest races. If there are moves we can think of, there are naturally moves we can't think of. So, the situation is not clear, so we have to be careful." Everyone's expressions were very serious. The Forest Alliance had just been formed and it was the most crucial and inexperienced time. Were they going to meet a large challenge and danger this quickly? Chapter 566. No matter who was behind the scenes. No matter what scheme they had. The most important thing right now was to solve the crisis of the three northern kingdoms. The Forest Alliance members couldn't give much help in this area, especially when it came to battles between armies. Among the four giants, the Savage Highlands was the only one with a relatively large population and a large army to fight in. Why would the Savage Highlands send troops for the three kingdoms? Not to mention the fact that the Forest Alliance had just been formed, now was the time to create value and not ask for it. The Savage Highlands was far from the three northern kingdoms and Miracle City's transport technology wasn't strong enough to send an army. The savage highlands didn't have the ability or obligation to send reinforcements from tens of thousands of miles away. Therefore, the matter of saving the three kingdoms, miracle commerce had to think of a way. Chu Tian decided to personally take charge. Although miracle commerce is at a disadvantage in terms of numbers and battle strength, we have the most advanced equipment on the continent. Even if we can't offset the large difference in quality and quantity, it is enough to stall for time with the Eagle Burial Kingdom's army. I will think of a way to stop this battle. The young miss couldn't leave. On one hand, the young miss wasn't strong enough, and on the other hand, the young miss had become Miracle City's brain. Almost all of Miracle Commerce and Miracle City's operations were under the young miss command. It was just like what she and Chu Tian were worried about. Although the Eagle Burial Kingdom was aggressive, it was very likely it was just a cover. Miracle City had to be on guard against other truly sinister killing moves. Meng Qingwu said to Chu Tian, "I've sent a semi-automatic mobile unit, the Berserker Corps, to the northern militant front lines. We'll use this opportunity to test out several new weapons that have just been developed. Remember to record the data and record the battle scene so that we can improve the weapons. Be careful." What was there to worry about with the young miss personally arranging it? Chu Tian headed to the northern militant front lines without another word. The northern militant kingdom used to be the Warhound's kingdom and was built on the Warhound Plains. This place was sparsely populated and had many spirit beast tribes. Once the Eagle Burial Kingdom's army entered, they would be like fish in water, being hard to find. The northern militant country was the northernmost of the three countries, being the weakest and loosest. It was because of these reasons that the northern militant country became one of the Eagle Burial Warring Kingdom's main targets. The main cities of the northern militant country had already been ransacked, and the entire Warhound Plains were filled with panic. According to reliable information, the Eagle Burial Kingdom had over 300,000 soldiers lying in ambush, with over 50,000 of them being aerial troops. 300,000 didn't sound like a lot, but it was actually quite a lot. This was because these 300,000 people were just the number of regular soldiers. With the Eagle Burial Kingdom's population and influence, if they mobilized the normal tribes, they could easily gather several million. However, these impromptu mobs were not as sharp as regular troops. Thus, they had to send out regular troops first. Like a sharp knife, they would first pierce through the enemy's defenses. Then, they would launch the tactic of using a sea of soldiers to devour everything like a river. In a simple and sturdy tent, the commander of the army was discussing a strategy with the high-level generals. This commander was a powerful Eagle clansman. The Eagle Burial Kingdom was named after the Eagle Burial Kingdom, not to bury eagles, but rather to praise the eagle god. Legend has it that the Eagle Burial Kingdom's royal family's ancestor was an ancient eagle god. Although it fell in the Eagle Burial Kingdom, it still influenced its descendants, allowing the Eagle Burial Kingdom's royal family to have a strength different from normal tribes. The Eagle Burial Kingdom referred to the buried ancient eagle god. The Eagle clan in the Eagle Burial Kingdom had a high status, especially the royal family that was proud of being the descendant of the eagle god. The current commander was an eagle god clansman. His face was blue, his hair was cinnabar, and his eyes were bright. He had teeth that protruded from his lips and a pair of wings on his ribs, looking like a combination of a human and a bird. His eyes were sharp and fierce, and each feather seemed to contain a strong power. The biggest difference between the Eagle God clansmen and normal Eagle clansmen was that the Eagle God clansmen could awaken the power of their bloodline, just like the great Zhou Queen Qinbingyu. Once the power of their bloodline was awakened, not only would they grow quickly, their battle strength would also be higher than those of the same level. Your Majesty, the Dark Eagle King, we've discovered an enemy army that is currently gathering on the prairies. It seems like they are here to deal with us. A general quickly came into the tent and respectfully bowed to the spirit beast. From the situation we've investigated, this is an army we've never seen before. There aren't many of them, only around 20,000. The Northern Militant War Zone's commander, the Dark Eagle King, was actually a vassal king of the Eagle Burial Kingdom. This king was different from the Fang king that was sent to the Warhound's plains to establish the Warhound's kingdom. This king was only a small region's manager, and if placed in the entire Eagle Burial Kingdom, he wouldn't even be able to appear. The Eagle Burial Kingdom fought with several large and small countries, and each country had several vassals. The Dark Eagle King was one of the 5 orthodox kings of the Eagle Burial Kingdom. Whether it was strength, status, or influence, it was not something the previous Warhound's king could compare to. To attack the 3 kingdoms this time, the Eagle Burial Kingdom had sent out 3 Eagle Kings at once. This was enough to show how much importance or fear they placed on the 3 kingdoms. A high-ranking general said with a cold smile, "Only 20,000 people? What is there to fear with this number? This general is willing to send out 30,000 wolf cavalry to wipe them all out." Don't forget the humiliation of the past. The Dark Eagle King's eyes were as sharp as a blade as it swept over the generals. "Our enemies are not sheep, but rather a group of dangerous wild beasts. Send out all the nearby roaming beasts and gather information on this army in the shortest amount of time. It would be best if we can capture 1 or 2 of their soldiers alive. Other than that, increase the vigilance in the air. If any flying objects appear, immediately shoot them down." The generals were a bit stunned. Why was the Dark Eagle King this cautious? There were a total of 150,000 soldiers of the Dark Eagle King stationed here, and they were all elites among elites of the Eagle Burial Kingdom, including light cavalry, infantry, air force, and etc. They could deal with any kind of enemy with ease, but now they were being cautious with a trivial 20,000 people. Was this still one of the 5 Eagle Kings that shook the Eagle Burial Kingdom? The Dark Eagle King had his reasons for being cautious. The Dark Eagle King was one of the few people that knew the truth. He knew that the 3 kingdoms wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. What they needed to be wary of was the Forest of Chaos behind them. Although the army was inferior to the Eagle Burial Kingdom, the Forest of Chaos had the advantage in terms of experts, with many Heaven Domain experts among them. The 5 Eagle Kings were very strong, but they were still experts in the 9th True Spirit Layer or the peak 9th True Spirit Layer. This kind of strength couldn't withstand a single blow from a Heaven Domain expert. If this army was sent by the Forest Alliance, they couldn't judge the enemy's battle strength from their numbers. The preliminary information was quickly gathered. This was a mixed army of ogres and barbarians. The Dark Eagle King was a bit stunned. The ogres and barbarians were not native races of the Warhound Plains, so this was clearly an external army. However, what he couldn't understand was why it was the ogres and barbarians. Although these 2 races had thick skin and boundless strength, they were ultimately not a race that could be nurtured into a powerhouse. If it was a battle between normal kingdoms, the ogres and barbarians' battle strength would be enough to shock the battlefield, but the current battle situation was completely different. Whether it was the barbarians or the ogres, their innate cultivation talent was very low, relying on brute force. This meant that their battle strength was limited and it was hard for these races to produce experts, which meant therefore they didn't have any civilization or kingdom on the continent, so their status was very low. How could this kind of army be the elites of the Forest Alliance? Could it be that he was thinking too much? A scout quickly came to report at this time, "Your Majesty the Dark Eagle King, this army is suddenly speeding towards us and will come into contact in an hour." What? How preposterous! The expressions of the generals all changed when they heard this. This small army actually dared to take the initiative to attack the Eagle Burial Kingdom's main force. This was no different from seeking death, it was simply an insult to the Eagle Burial Kingdom's battle strength. Although there had to be a reason for this abnormality, the Dark Eagle King couldn't find a reason to avoid this battle, so he immediately gave the order to meet the enemy. When the thunder like war drums sounded out, the Eagle Burial Kingdom's army began to move with high efficiency. The Dark Eagle King's army was mainly cavalry, which was divided into air and ground cavalry and light cavalry. The light cavalry consisted of the Demon Wolf Cavalry, Raptor Dragon Cavalry, Winged Dragon Cavalry, and Goshawk Cavalry. The heavy cavalry consisted of the Earth Dragon Cavalry, Kodo Beast Cavalry, Wyvern Cavalry, and etc. There were also several tens of thousands of heavy armor infantry, forming a strong core force. The enemy has appeared. The Eagle Burial Kingdom army had just finished their preparations when the Forest Alliance army appeared in their field of view. When the Eagle Burial Kingdom generals saw the other side's formation, they were all stunned. Just like the intelligence they had just obtained, this army was mainly made up of ogres and barbarians, only their equipment was very strange. This was something that had never been heard of in the countries of the continent. Whether it was the ogres or barbarians, they were all wearing full body armor. This armor was different from the armor of the soldiers of the other kingdoms. It looked like a layer of flexible metal skin that covered over 90% of their body from head to toe in a seamless manner. There seemed to be source energy batteries on their backs and chests that were supplying energy to the equipment. It was hard for the other countries of the continent to mass-produce this kind of equipment. The equipment of this army was even more complicated. They had all kinds of unknown equipment on them, wearing thick shields, wall-mounted energy swords, or wall-mounted firearms, etc. These over 20,000 people formed several square formations, and each square formation was protecting several heavy war chariots. The engines of these war chariots released a blue glow, and they were actually floating in the air as they slowly moved forward. There were thick cannons and rows of missiles. All of them were filled with a dangerous aura. Chapter 567. What a strange troop. This was the first feeling every Dark Eagle soldier had. Miracle City's army did not make a single sound as they advanced. There were no war drums, no bugle horns, no command flags. The entire army did not have any parts to transmit or release orders, but they still advanced in an orderly and rapid manner. Not to mention the bumpkins of the Eagle Burial Kingdom, even the most knowledgeable scholars of the continent couldn't explain this. However, if one understood Miracle City, they would understand that this wasn't a difficult matter for Miracle City because each soldier's helmet had a signal receiving function. The Airborne Command Center could directly send orders to the soldiers, and each square formation had a mobile command center. Even the captains of each team had the authority to use the communication channel. From the whole army, to the parts, and to the individual units, these three channels could guarantee that Miracle City's soldiers could move according to their orders. Fast, and timely. No matter what happened on the battlefield, not a single soldier could receive the situation in time. Under this kind of communication, the pale and powerless art of war had already lost its value. They were only competing in terms of strength. The Dark Eagle army also found something abnormal. For an army, especially an attacking army, the vanguard was the most important unit, so they had to have a strong enough charge and penetration. If a sword's tip wasn't sharp enough, how could it easily pierce through its target? It was the same logic. If the vanguard of an army was sharp, how could they break through the enemy's formation? If they couldn't shock them in the first round, they would be greatly weakened in the following battles. The Miracle City Army's vanguard was in a standard formation. Each ogre had 4 barbarian soldiers, with the ogres holding a special giant shield in one hand and a large caliber source energy cannon in the other. The barbarian soldiers were all holding destroyer heavy firearms, standing behind the ogres. These weapons looked heavy and stupid. How could they be used as the vanguard? The Dark Eagle King couldn't be careless at all. The Dark Eagle King had a lot of information, including the Battle of the 4 States Lake in southern Xia. He also knew what kind of weapons these humans had, so why would they need to charge forward with these weapons? Not to mention, from the movements of these soldiers, Miracle City's Berserker army was a well-trained army. This kind of dangerous aura was not something a mob could release. Something's wrong. The Dark Eagle King gave an order to a valiant general beside him: take a wolf cavalry vanguard and charge in from the left flank. Test their strength. Understood. This fierce general was a famous general of the Eagle Burial Kingdom, and his status was even higher than the Warhound's kings. An experienced general would feel a dangerous aura, therefore he did not have any objections to the Dark Eagle King's cautious actions. A group of Black Wolf riders charged out of the formation like an arrow. The Demon Wolf cavalry was the most common cavalry in the Eagle Burial Kingdom. The Dark Eagle Army's Demon Wolf cavalry were different. These demon wolves were level 2 demon beasts. They could reach subsonic speeds with their full strength and were very mobile, making it hard for people to catch them. The order was given. The 10,000 demon wolves were like a swarm of locusts. With a swoosh, they separated from the army. That rapid and silent charge was like a lawnmower that flattened a large area of the grassland. Quick, it was too fast. This kind of army could quickly attack the left flank of the Berserker army. Their goal was to scatter the enemy's formation in one fell swoop. As long as the Forest Alliance army was in chaos, the Dark Eagle King would seize this chance and the army would charge in. No matter what tricks they had, they would be defeated in one fell swoop. Of course, the Berserker army wasn't blind. When this dangerous and fast wolf cavalry moved, the Berserker army had already received the order, but their formation didn't change at all. They just charged at the Eagle Burial Kingdom army, as if they were ignoring the wolf cavalry's interference. This was because these flies didn't need their attention at all. The cannons in the center of each square began to rotate, and a violent energy suddenly gathered. Several energy cannons instantly shot out. The wolf cavalry was very fast, and when they were about to charge out, the energy cannons created a series of heavy injuries, causing the entire formation to fall into chaos. The Dark Eagle King's expression changed. The Eagle Burial Kingdom already had a bit of information, especially the source energy cannons used in the Warhounds, but they never would have thought that in less than a year, Miracle Commerce's source energy cannons would have been improved to this degree. Not only did their range increase by several times, their power also increased by several times, and they were even made into war chariots. It was no wonder the army had this kind of attack formation. Just based on the range and power of the source energy cannons, this was not something a vanguard army could achieve. Therefore, Miracle Commerce's army didn't need a strong vanguard at all. No matter how strong the enemy's defense was, how many times could it withstand the bombardment of these cannons? The Dark Eagle King angrily roared, "Sound the drums, everyone attack!" The Eagle Burial Kingdom's war drums became 10 times louder, and each drum beat seemed like it was hitting a person's heart. The war drums were made from high-level demon beast leather, therefore it had a spiritual intimidation effect. When the 100 war drums beat at the same time, it was deafening and reverberated through the 9 heavens. Woo! Several long dragon bone horns were blown, instantly pushing the atmosphere of the battlefield to its peak. The Earth Dragon army and the Kodo Beast army poured out, charging at Miracle Commerce's army. The Dark Eagle King was very clear that the best way to deal with this kind of army was to brace himself and fight. Although their weapons were very powerful, they had their limits. Once the two sides engaged in close combat, no matter how powerful the cannons were, no matter how powerful the firearms were, would they still be of any use? But was it easy to get close? Several dozen source energy cannons fired at the same time. The dazzling and gorgeous energy cannonballs plowed gullies into the ground in an instant, and the appearance of each gully signified the disappearance of hundreds of soldiers. Miracle Commerce's source energy cannons already used the second-generation energy source. These source energy cannons on the war chariots were limited by the vehicles, so their power wasn't that high. But even like this, it was still enough to kill a 5th to 6th true spirit layer cultivator. Even if the Eagle Burial Kingdom was an elite, how many of them could reach the 5th to 6th true spirit layer? When the Dark Eagle King saw the terrifying destructive power of the source energy cannons and the Eagle Burial Kingdom's elite soldiers disappearing in the beams of light, his eyes almost spat out flames. Go, all of you go. This weapon can only attack long-range targets. As long as we go up, it'll be our world. The Eagle Burial Kingdom army was truly brave. Even in this kind of situation, they charged forward while facing the cannons. Now they were very close to Miracle City's army. The time was ripe. The airborne army moved out. The Eagle Burial Kingdom had many airborne soldiers. There were nimble eagle warriors and powerful battle strength like the twin-legged dragon knights, covering Miracle City's army like a large dark cloud. Miracle City's source energy cannons were indeed very strong, but their weakness was very clear. They were more suited for charging into a battle, which was to deal with targets that couldn't move. They were more suited for dealing with large armies on the battlefield, but once they met an airborne target or a ground target that was too close, The source energy cannons were a bit lacking and they would lose sight of them. Kill, kill. Most of the Eagle Burial Kingdom soldiers were awakened soul cultivators and they were releasing the glow of their source spirits at this moment. All kinds of charged attacks were thrown at Miracle City's army. Miracle City's army faced an army that clearly outnumbered them, but they weren't panicked at all. The ogres in the front raised their shields at the same time and a scene that shocked the Eagle Burial Kingdom soldiers happened. The ogre's shields released light and the light connected together, instantly forming an incomparably large barrier to the outside world. The random attacks of the Eagle Burial Kingdom soldiers landed on the giant barrier, but most of them disappeared. There were only a few strong attacks that created cracks on the barrier. The second and third rows, Miracle City's army released 3 layers of large energy shields. What was this? The Eagle Burial Kingdom generals were all stunned. Battle barriers weren't rare on the battlefield, but most of them were very troublesome and could only be used to defend cities or strongholds. This kind of large moving barrier was very rare. Airborne army. Go around them. Although Miracle City's battle barrier was very strong, it wasn't a full-range defensive barrier. The Eagle Burial Kingdom's airborne army directly went over the barrier to attack the soldiers. Who would have thought that at this time, the soldiers would raise their arm guards and light would appear on their arm guards, blocking the Eagle Burial Kingdom's large-scale attack. Other than the large-scale barrier, each soldier was carrying a barrier with them. This time even the Dark Eagle King felt a wave of fear. He even suspected that he was in a nightmare. The wealthiest countries on the continent would at most give each soldier a protective talisman. This talisman's defensive effect was very limited and it required the user to be proficient in talisman techniques to use it. He had never seen a scene like this before. Each soldier had their own protective barrier that could be activated and deactivated at any time. It was convenient and the most important thing was that it had a very strong defensive effect. The Dark Eagle army didn't have time to give any other orders before Miracle City's army began their counterattack. Several thousand heavy firearms opened fire at the same time, and it was like a curtain of light falling from the sky. Countless energy bullets fell like a wild storm. Those powerful pterosaurs with strong bodies were all turned into live targets. The individual source energy cannons also exploded. One giant beast after another was blown to pieces. Although they had the advantage in numbers, the Dark Eagle army met a one-sided slaughter. They couldn't break through the strong defenses no matter what and were all stopped on the outside, enduring the wild baptism of cannon fire. Chapter 568. Whether it was the Dark Eagle army attacking from the front or from the air, they couldn't disturb the Miracle Commerce Army's formation at all. The Miracle Commerce Army was orderly as the cannon fire swept across the Dark Eagle army. How was this a battle? It was simply a mixture of metal and meat that was being thrown into a meat grinder. Those who died under the source energy cannons didn't even have a complete corpse left. This was not a battle that could be measured by numbers. Even if the Dark Eagle army was stronger, they still couldn't resist the weapons carefully developed by Miracle Commerce. Their steps were all stopped by the iron wall of shields. In front of the incomparably fierce and powerful source energy weapons, their equipment, their cultivation, and their powerful demon beast mounts were all as weak as paper. The fortress. This was a fortress that was hard to shake. The Dark Eagle King couldn't hold it in anymore. Go! Go! The remaining Dark Eagle army soldiers and the guards poured out like a flood. Although the Miracle Commerce Army's shields were very strong, there was a limit to how strong the shields were. With this kind of wild attack, they didn't believe they couldn't break a single layer of the shields. The battle had already reached its climax. Miracle Commerce's Berserker army was built with large amounts of resources. There were shields made from energy shields, short soldiers made from energy weapons, and war chariots powered by source energy engines. Each soldier was wearing the newest Miracle Commerce mech suits. The mech suits already had a simple control system that could connect to the weapons and communication devices they carried. It could be said that this was the most advanced information warfare force in this era. Even in the most chaotic battlefield, they could quickly determine the situation and launch the correct attack or defense. How could this kind of watertight defense be easily broken through? Several dozen war chariots suddenly opened their launchers. Hundreds of missiles shot into the sky, leaving behind a beautiful trail as they wildly bombarded the troops around the Dark Eagle King. Some of these missiles were intercepted by the aerial troops of the Dark Eagle Army, while others successfully landed on the ground. Each missile released intense light and heat, and each attack took the lives of at least hundreds of Dark Eagle Army soldiers. The Dark Eagle King's face was already covered in dust. Although with his cultivation, it was enough for him to avoid the center of the explosion, and the shockwaves were unable to harm him. His surroundings were already filled with flames and smoke, making it impossible for him to see anything clearly. This is bad. Guards, guards! The Dark Eagle King felt a dangerous aura and immediately gave an angry roar. The Dark Eagle personal guards all gathered around him. These personal guards were all experts in the 7th Awakened Soul Layer, and there were around 2,000 of them, enough to resist a true spirit realm attack. However, at this moment, a figure walked out from the smoke. This person did not wear any exaggerated attire, only a spotless white robe. He did not seem to be hiding his tracks at all as he swaggered over to where the Dark Eagle King was. "Protect His Majesty, Dark Eagle King." A Black Hawk personal guard angrily roared as he soared into the sky. He was a very powerful Hawk Clan warrior, and with a flap of his wings, he teleported in the air, appearing in front of Chu Tian in just a few jumps. His 10 sharp claws tore through the air, finally turning into 10 powerful energies that swept over. The claw went down. Even the sturdy body of an earth dragon would be torn into pieces on the spot. What happened next made this guard captain dumbfounded. The human continued to slowly walk over, completely ignoring the attack. 10 brutal and tyrannical claw lights landed on his body without any hindrance, but they also passed through without any hindrance. This was not the feeling of flesh being torn apart. It was as if he had landed on thin air. Before the personal guard captain could come back to his senses, Chu Tian had already walked to his side. He did not use any spirit energy or any cultivation technique, he just sent out a very simple punch. However, this simple punch was extremely fast. The personal guard captain's body flew through the air and he couldn't withstand the huge force as he broke into several pieces in the air. A punch. A casual punch. It had actually shattered a peak 9th Awakened Soul Layer expert. This human clearly did not use any cultivation technique or spirit energy, it was just a normal punch. This strange scene shocked everyone, including the Dark Eagle King himself. "Kill him!" Hundreds of Black Hawk bodyguards pounced forward to attack. Whether it was sabers, spears, swords, sticks, ice, fire, water, or earth, physical attacks, or elemental attacks, as long as they landed on Chu Tian's body, they were all nullified and turned into nothingness. Chu Tian did not place these people in his eyes at all. He moved at a steady speed through the middle. His target was very clear. It was the Dark Eagle King that was being protected in the middle. What is he? Why can't we attack him? These personal guards were all elite soldiers picked out of 1,000. Each one of them had undergone strict training. Even if they met a strong opponent, they would not hesitate to charge forward and fight without panicking. Now that they were facing Chu Tian, who was slowly walking over, they all began to waver and hesitate. Chu Tian was like a ghost that could not be attacked at all. Whether it was energy attacks or normal attacks, they were all nullified from start to finish. If they did not see him explode a personal guard captain with a single punch, perhaps they would have thought that this was just an illusion. In less than a minute, Chu Tian was already not far from the Dark Eagle King. The 2 elite personal guard captains charged forward fearlessly from the left and right. Chu Tian's expression still did not change. He took a step forward, and 2 swords slashed across his body. When the fierce sword chi was released, it actually cut 5 or 6 of the Dark Eagle personal guards in half. It was still useless. The 2 captains did not have time to retract their attacks. A hand stretched out and placed on their chests. This hand was as clear as jade and was even smoother than a woman's. However, the muscles were as clear as a statue carved by an elf. It could be said to be the perfect combination of strength and beauty. They had never seen such a perfect pair of arms before. This was the last thought left in the minds of the two captains. Because the moment the two captains had this thought, Chu Tian's eyes had already turned a berserk red. That pair of perfect arms that looked like they were carved by an artist suddenly had a layer of blue veins pop out. A pure power, from every part of his body, every bone, every muscle, was transmitted to his shoulders, arms, wrists, and finally to his palms. Pang! The two captains were like cannonballs that were stuffed into a cannon and shot out. In almost an instant, they flew over 100 meters. The dozen or so Black Shadow personal guards were smashed together. Under that pure and terrifying power, their flesh, armor, and weapons seemed to be squeezed together, turning into an indistinguishable mixture. The color of Chu Tian's eyes returned to normal. He did not care at all, as if he had swatted away 2 flies. He took 4 or 5 steps forward and arrived in front of the Dark Eagle King. Although the Dark Eagle King was 2 heads taller than him, Chu Tian still looked down at him. Who was it that leaked the information to you? The Dark Eagle King looked at this young human and actually felt his body break out in a cold sweat. Kill, kill, kill. The surrounding personal guards saw that the Dark Eagle King had already confronted this dangerous human. They all charged forward like moths to a flame. There were many black-silver personal guards, and each one of them was not weak. If everyone's attacks were stacked together, there was a good chance that they could break Chu Tian's void escape. But even if they could break the void shield, would they have a chance to kill Chu Tian? Chu Tian's body was not the same as before. Chu Tian also had the Starlight Immortal body, and Chu Tian also had the spatial movement ability. No matter how many people there were, it was useless. They were just sending themselves to their deaths. However, Chu Tian was not in the mood to clean up this trash, so he decided to deal with them all at once. Spiritual energy exploded. Chu Tian's spiritual energy filled the sky. This was the group spiritual energy attack he had learned from the demon Ant Valley. Chu Tian's divine sense was much stronger than before, so the spiritual energy explosion was even stronger and could cover a greater distance. The Dark Eagle personal guards felt an explosion in their heads, like a bomb had been thrown into their heads. This strong explosion instantly destroyed all their thoughts and intuition. They were all like puppets with their strings cut, their bodies stiffened as they fell to the ground. Other than shock, there was still shock. This human strength had completely surpassed their imaginations. He had used his spiritual energy to instantly take down all the Dark Eagle personal guards. Chu Tian did not even look at the people lying on the ground. His 2 bright moon-like eyes stared at the Dark Eagle King, and a chill came from the depths of his eyes. I'll ask again, who revealed this information to you? There is nothing that can threaten the warriors of the Eagle Burial Kingdom. After a short moment of shock, the Dark Eagle King revealed a fierce expression. Die. The Dark Eagle King released the power of his source spirit, and his wings spread high into the air. A jet black spear appeared in his hand, and he moved very quickly. When Chu Tian looked up, a long spear was already in front of him. The spear pierced through the spatial barrier and stabbed into Chu Tian's left chest. The Dark Eagle King was stunned before revealing a look of joy. It wasn't that this human couldn't attack, it was just that his attack wasn't strong enough. However, the joy that he revealed quickly froze on his face because his spear stabbed into Chu Tian's body without being able to move an inch. Rather, there was a strong rebound that forced him back several steps. Chu Tian shook his head. You're completely wrong. The Dark Eagle King said with a cold smile, Human, you dare fight me? The Dark Eagle King had already felt that although this human's cultivation was high, he was only in the 8th true spirit layer. It was only because he cultivated several strange cultivation techniques that he had an unimaginably strong defense, but it wasn't like this defense couldn't be broken. The Dark Eagle King was a strong expert in the peak 9th true spirit layer, and he had the Eagle God's bloodline, so his battle strength was not something normal people could compare to. Why did he need to fear this human? Chu Tian softly said, If you can block a single move of mine, it'll be my loss. Shameless boasting. Then give it a try. When the Dark Eagle King charged out in rage, Chu Tian waved his hand in the air and a sharp spatial energy passed through his body. The Dark Eagle King's pupils suddenly shrank and his expression froze on his face. He could clearly see his body being separated. Phaseless sword. The Dark Eagle King never would have thought that Chu Tian's true trump card was not his dodging ability, his defense, or even his spiritual energy, but rather a spatial attributed sword art. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.